Okay, call this meeting to order at 7:31 and 45 seconds. And this is a work session. We are generally pretty informal, but we do obey Robert's Rules of Order, and we do things the way we usually do. So let's move on to the approval of the agenda. Are any changes needed to the agenda?
Mr. Mayor.
Mr. Town Manager.
The item that I communicated with you earlier, item number 4 on the work session, staff will not be prepared to move forward on that discussion this evening. And then change in the order of the presentations as I just requested.
Okay, I think that's all fine. There we are. Okay, mark that. One other item under new business, we've got a request from MNC PPC, at least it was not on new business under me, to validate the name of East Beale Circle. And so I'd like to bring that up, and I've added that to my agenda. So unless any council members object, then we'll take those as amendments. Any concerns about that?
I have no objections.
Okay. Then I'll ask now, are there any conflicts of interest that any council members present have for items on the agenda? Silence equals no, you don't.
I have none.
Okay, then let's go ahead and move ahead. And the first item will be a presentation of Defined Benefit Plan Investment Update, Michelle Brandenburg and Hannah Schrift, PNC Bank.
Great. Thank you so much, Mr. Mayor. Really appreciate the time to be in front of you and all the council members and everyone on this call. Town of Riverdale Park is a very important relationship to us. And we take our fiduciary responsibility to the plan participants very seriously. And we are excited to come to you today off the heels of 2 really strong years with double-digit returns for the pension plan. I think we're going to start with our 1231 presentation that I know we also provided. Awesome. So what we plan on doing today is just giving you a brief overview of what we see in the market, really what happened within 2024 and also what we're expecting for 2025. And then, of course, we'll go through the portfolio asset allocation and the portfolio performance. My understanding is that we have about 30 minutes today, so we're hoping to finish our presentation, including any questions that you may have by at least 8 p.m. Does that still work for you all?
That sounds good.
Okay. And with that, I will go ahead and turn it over to my colleague, Hannah.
Great. Thanks, Michelle, and thank you all for your time this evening. If we could flip to page 4, we will start with what we call our taking stock of the markets. So this is all things market and economy from our investment office and strategy team. In many ways, 2024 was a continuation of broader trends that we saw throughout the last few years. We saw growth leading over value, U.S. leading over international, and Magnificent 7 names. The U.S., mega cap tech names dominating the majority of returns within the market. 2024, as Michelle mentioned, was the second year in a row that markets delivered plus 20% growth. Value add came from maintaining a diversified portfolio with a focus on U.S. stocks, quality stocks, and then diversification within fixed income. So not only focusing on the core areas of fixed income, but the credit areas as well, such as high yield. Turning our attention to January, the S&P 500 was up about 3% for the month. But what we've seen so far this year in 2025 is a bit of a role reversal. A lot of the themes that we've seen play out throughout the last few years have had a shift. So far this year, I know it's still early, but we are seeing value lead over growth, international equities lead over U.S., and up until recently, mid and small cap stocks lead over large cap. So quite a bit of a role reversal than we've seen throughout 2024. If we scroll to page 7, Perfect. These are our annual top 10 investor themes that we think are going to shape the path forward for the year ahead. We began last year with a lot of different unanswered questions around interest rates, monetary policy, inflation, consumer health, election outcomes, and a few more. And although a lot of these questions were answered throughout 2024, we definitely enter a rapidly evolving macro landscape with a bit more of a complex backdrop for investors to navigate. And so in the next couple of slides, I'd love to dive into some of these top 10 themes in a little bit more detail. We've got to turn to page 14. Perfect. Most equity asset classes outside of US large cap experienced negative earnings growth throughout 2024. However, what we anticipate to see in 2025 is a broadening out of returns and earnings growth, specifically in certain sectors and areas of the market, such as US small and mid cap, as well as emerging market equities as well. We're expected to see double-digit earnings growth. And even when we exclude those magnificent 7 names that have been dominating so much of returns and earnings growth, we're still seeing positive earnings growth for the year. And you can see about 13% earnings growth is expected for the first quarter of this year, excluding those magnificent 7 names. Should the US business cycle continue in this slowing expansion phase of the business cycle and the Fed help in a mid-cycle reacceleration, we think earnings growth could even broaden to the more cyclical areas of the market that tend to be more highly correlated with economic growth. Think your energy, industrials, and financial areas of the market. On page 17, one item that has definitely been on investors' minds and everyone's been keeping a close eye on is inflation. Inflation's sitting around 3%, which is just a bit higher than that 2% target that the Fed has laid out. And it has come down pretty drastically from even a few years ago when we were seeing inflation upwards of 6%. However, what we've seen is that certain areas of the market definitely remain stickier than when we once anticipated. Different areas such as housing and services, inflation's remained just a bit higher. One thing that we are keeping a close eye on and our economics team is watching is tariffs. Should tariffs come to fruition, we do expect them to be inflationary in nature. But what we're really looking at is inflation, is that going to be a one-time hit to inflation where the Fed will continue to be able to stay on their course of rate cutting? Or is inflation going to be more permanent? Is it going to lead to higher prices across the board for a longer period of time where the Fed may need to adjust course? They may need to be on pause longer and perhaps even reverse course and start to hike rates. So inflation, the inflation numbers are definitely, a key component we're watching and really interested in seeing, again, how those tariffs are ultimately going to play out to see if it has any impact on how the Fed is going to react from here forward. Turning to page 18. Leads nicely into this page. The Fed has really been, a top news item, I would say, for the last few years at this point in time, specifically since early 2022 when the Fed started to hike rates. The path of Fed policy, again, has really dominated the macro landscape. Just a few months ago, as we were heading into the end of 2024, Fed guidance suggested that we could anticipate 100 basis points of rate cuts in 2025. That was on top of the already 100 basis points that we were expecting in cuts in 2024. But what we saw at the December Fed meeting was a bit more hawkish rhetoric from the Fed that perhaps we shouldn't expect as many rate cuts as soon in 2025 due to the inflation numbers coming out hotter than expected. Our PNC economics team has updated our forecast to include 2 rate cuts in 2025. One in the May meeting and one in July meeting, and each 25 basis points each, cuts each. This should bring the Fed's funds rate down to about 3.5% and 4% by mid-2025. Overall, we do believe that monetary policy will help aid in this mid-cycle reacceleration, and it should help to extend the slowing expansion phase of the business cycle that we've been in for quite some time now. Just as we've talked about the Fed raising rates and tightening having a lagged effect on the economy, we do believe that easing monetary policy will have a lagged effect as well. And we could start to see some of the benefits of that easing monetary policy as early as the first quarter this year. So overall, what does that mean for your portfolio? Where do we go from here? If we scroll to page 20, on this page, we highlight a few different scenarios, but I'd like to turn your attention to the very first column, which is our base case or highest probability outcome of where we think we're headed for 2025. Overall, our economics and strategy team maintain a positive outlook for the year ahead. We think with resilient economic data and us being in this easing monetary policy stance, our base case is that the business cycle will be extended and the slowing expansion phase will be extended and could actually, with the Fed policy moving to that easing stance, aid in a mid-cycle reacceleration. We expect inflation to remain choppy, but we do anticipate it coming down to that 2% target that the Fed has laid out. It just might not be a straight line down. You might see some months where it accelerates and then decelerates, but overall, we do think it will get there. We think the labor market, we can continue to expect that it will be healthy and that interest rates will be somewhat range bound. And so what this means within your portfolio is that we are still focusing on quality within the portfolio, both from an equity and fixed income standpoint. And when we dive into the portfolio specifically, I'd be happy to point out exactly what those quality allocations look like. But for now, I'll pause and see if the group has any questions about either where we've been or possibly where we're headed.
Council members, any questions?
Okay, hearing
Just
none,
looking-
we'll
Just looking awfully quiet. I will just go ahead and throw one out very often. Oh, Councilmember Lingua, I thought he was going to pop in, so he found the unmute button. Councilmember Lingua, go ahead.
Well, I'm gonna let you go first because
No,
you
I'm not
say
sure
something-
that's a good idea, but I'll go ahead and do it.
Oh no, I think it's a fine idea. So please chime in. I'll be happy to follow.
So one of the things that that is generally viewed as true is that uncertainty is not good for the markets, and there seems to be a lot of uncertainty right now with the things going on, especially in the federal government, and how that might play out. And how did that impact your forecast? Did that shift the chances of decelerating growth, stagflation, and growth reacceleration, or did you adjust within each of those cases for how that was, or how it, or maybe it came in another way?
Yeah, so you're absolutely correct, Mr. Mayor, that there is a lot of uncertainty and elevated volatility that we are anticipating in markets for the year ahead. So our strategy teams and investment office teams in their base case have included that elevated volatility that we are expected to experience, not only from being in this slowing expansion phase of the business cycle. One of the key characteristics of that is elevated volatility, but also due to maybe some of the political uncertainty that you are mentioning. So that is in our base case. We are, incorporating that elevated volatility in that base case listed out there. We think what will be helpful is as the administration starts to get some clarity and, should I call it, certainty around some of their policies, we do think investors are going to be able to adjust quickly and deal with some of the different policies that will come out of this administration. Michelle, I saw you come off mute. Anything else to add?
I was just going to mention that one of the changes that happened in response to at least some elevated inflation numbers, and some of that was because of anticipated fiscal policy, is that we did push out our basis cuts for the Federal Reserve. So we did have it earlier in 2025, and we are now predicting less and pushed it a little bit further out to that mid-year mark. I've even heard our economists say, they think it's more likely that we will get less, basis cuts or interest rate cuts than more. When we're thinking about 2025. So that's another way that we've seen kind of fiscal policy uncertainty play out.
Okay, and one final question. There was a call late in 2024 by the president-elect to remove the debt ceiling, calling on Congress to remove the debt ceiling. And would that have any impact that you would see on the projections?
Yeah, certainly fiscal debt and will have an impact on markets. It's not going to be an immediate impact on markets, but it's one of those things that will impact us, over the long term, and eventually we'll have to come to terms with fiscal debt. I think there is a lot of uncertainty about how that could play out in the market. Right now, when we think about interest rates and the interest rate that we're paying, on our debt as a country, compared to perhaps some other places, the yield that you can get on, debt within the United States is better, and our debt is more manageable in that regard. But you're absolutely right. We would expect any kind of debt increase to have an impact on markets over the long term.
Okay. Those are all of my questions at this time. Councilmember Lingua, do you have more?
Yeah, I just had one all of this. I appreciate you brought up the points that you did, because one of those in there was what I had a concern about, that being, budget debt coming up. As we still have a budget reconciliation coming in mid-March for this current fiscal year for the federal government. One other thing that I was looking at that has a pronounced effect on several ways is the yield on 10-year treasuries, and how that can be affected by what's happening abroad as well as what's happening here. And I was wondering if some insight could be shared about where they see that going and how that might affect these plans.
Yeah, so I'll go ahead and start. Michelle, you can chime in for anything I missed. So one thing that we think will affect the yield on the 10-year is, as the Fed starts to cut rates, that should bring down shorter term rates, and hopefully that yield curve, and we started to see this actually already, that yield curve should shift from that the inverted to more of a flat to more of a positive and upward sloping yield curve. So when we expect to see that, we would expect to see your longer duration fixed income holdings within your portfolio benefit from that positive and upward sloping yield curve. So that's one, specific change within your portfolio that should benefit from that increasing 10-year. But Michelle, I saw you come off mute again. Not sure if you have anything else to add.
I would just say our perspective is that, especially in those longer term duration 10-year that we're talking about, we would expect them to be range bound. And what that really means for the market is higher for longer, I think, than originally anticipated, just given the factors that are keeping, our yield a little bit higher, including inflation, economic expectations, those sorts of things.
Okay. All right. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Please keep going.
Perfect. So let's dive into the portfolio on page 27. Great. So your portfolio targets a 58% equity, 38, let's see if my memory serves me right, 38% fixed income portfolio, and 4% cash portfolio. Ranges to the right are listed there, taken from your investment policy statement, that allow us to deviate slightly from those targets, whether it be from overall market movements or perceived opportunities that Michelle and I see within the portfolio. All of this data, as we mentioned, is as of 12/31. So as of year end, your portfolio finished right in line with those targets of about 58% equity, 37% fixed income, and about 5% cash. We did talk about the Fed being on hold, at least at their January meeting, where they did not make any changes to interest rates. So right now, with the rate cuts that we did experience in 2024, that cash within your portfolio is earning about 4.25%, which is not a bad place to be at this point in time, to be earning that risk-free. We also mentioned that markets have been up for the year thus far. So due to the positive market returns we have seen in the market, your portfolio value as of Friday's close of business is $13,669,580. So up just a bit from that year-end market value that you see listed here on this page. I'm going to stay on this page for a moment to talk through overall portfolio positionings that we have within the portfolio at this point in time. The first one is that we are more focused on large cap over small and mid at this point in time. We find that the US large cap asset class is really the growth and innovation engine of that public equity universe, given its higher fundamental and sustainable characteristics that we see. These companies face the exact same headwinds that small and mid-cap companies face, but they're able to better deal with some of those elevated costs of capital and elevated inflation due to their larger size, scale, and balance sheets. From another perspective, I mentioned a focus on quality within the portfolio at this point in time, and that's really to position ourselves for this slowing growth environment. Higher quality companies tend to have more consistent earnings growth that are projected by more of their competitive advantages. And they're able to weather some of the volatility, as we've talked about, that comes along with the slowing expansion phase of the business cycle. So that looks like a few different things within your portfolio. The first is a focus on large cap equities, as I've mentioned. Focus on specific quality funds. So you have a quality dividend growth fund within your portfolio. And then also a focus on core fixed income. That allows us to capture diversified exposure to some of those higher grade areas of the fixed income market, such as treasuries and corporates. So those are two high-level positionings that we have within the portfolio at this point in time. I'll pause there and see if there are any questions.
Council members, any questions? I'll just say, seems reasonable discussion. So thank you. Appreciate it. Please continue.
So I'll jump ahead to page 30, just being mindful of time. There's one trade that I'd like to point out in terms of a change that Michelle and I made within the portfolio during the fourth quarter of last year. A name that you will no longer see on the page had a ticker of USMV. It was a US minimum volatility strategy that we had in the portfolio on a tactical basis. We use tactical positions that are meant to be shorter term in nature and only in the portfolio to capture or take advantage of current market trends that we're seeing. It's not necessarily a fund you would see in the portfolio 3 years down the line. Given that we saw fading recession risks, easing monetary policy, and some of that political uncertainty subside in terms of the election outcome, we no longer thought it warranted a low volatility allocation. This fund tends to perform best during periods of market stress. And again, given the Fed's recalibration of rates, we think that that should help extend the business cycle, and we no longer need that more defensive tactical asset allocation within the portfolio. I was a small sliver of the portfolio, only about 2%. So we've put those funds back into that S&P 500 fund, ticker IBV that you see on the first line item there. The final moments, we'll hop to performance. If you don't mind, Mr. Mayor, it was the second document that was, I'll call it a one-pager that I think you had up originally that looks at January performance.
Okay, well, I don't control the screen, so
apologies. Whoever is controlling the screen, thank you. So Michelle and I thought it might be helpful to provide you updated performance numbers through January, given we're sitting here at the towards the end of February. So if you don't mind scrolling down, we'll look at performance. It's about the second half of the page. Perfect. So across the top there in the blue, there's a lot of numbers there. So I'll start with how we read this page, but across the blue there is your different time periods. So quarter to date represents the month of January, and then you have your 1, 3, and 5-year numbers. Along the left-hand side there, everything in bold is your portfolio. So you'll see total gross, total net numbers, which mean once fees have been removed, and then your equity and fixed income portions broken out. Anything italicized along the left-hand side there is our benchmarks. So how we're comparing ourselves against. The S&P 500 rose during the month of January, as I mentioned before, and we really saw market returns broadening out to the more cyclical, value, smaller cap oriented areas of the market. We also saw an increase in market breadth, which is just another way of saying the number of stocks with an increasing in price. This usually is a good indication of the overall health of the economy. And so maintaining a diversified exposure within your portfolio and having exposure to different areas of the market, like small and mid cap, like international equities, really benefited your portfolio as we saw a broadening out of returns for the month of January. If we shift our attention over to the 1-year numbers, which is that second column there, you can see that your portfolio is seeing strong double-digit returns, up about 13.32% net of fees, outpacing the benchmark listed there of 13.18%. As I mentioned, global equities ended 2024 near all-time highs, and it was really dominated by those US mega cap names that really led the way. You saw strong performance and double-digit returns from other areas of the market, like small and mid cap, but they still lagged those broader US large cap names. What was driving performance as a contributor to the performance was our underweight to international equities that we maintain. As we saw the US dollar rally, some subpar economic data come out of Europe, and concerns, of course, around potential tariffs that weighed on international markets. And so we were able to benefit from our underweight within the portfolio there. And then also I mentioned that exposure, diversified exposure, not only to core fixed income, but credit fixed income as well. So specifically within your portfolio, a high yield positioning that really helps drive that 3.4% return that you see listed for fixed income. I'll pause my comments there, seeing we're bumping up against time, and see if the group has any questions in terms of performance or anything else we discussed today.
Okay, council members, any questions or comments on the presentation? Just for luck, I'm going to open it up to any residents, anyone else in attendance, if you have any questions about the presentation. Councilmember Lingua, I see you're unmuted. Do you have any comments or questions at this time?
Well, just looking at the year-to-date numbers, seeing that it's right, not far off from an 8%. That's comforting to see, and I appreciate the effort that the ladies are making on the portfolio.
I agree, things are looking okay, and we just have to hope that the markets keep doing what they're doing right now, and hopefully we will see good things coming. Mr. Town Manager, do you have any questions for the?
Well, I just wanted to share a little bit of perspective. One, to first thank Hannah and Michelle for their work and PNC's work in reacting to changing conditions, for keeping the town well informed of their movements within our portfolio. And yes, it's encouraging to see that the market value is now 13.7. 8 years ago, the market value was about 6.8. And there's two ways that our value increases. One is we put more money in, and two, it performs well. Despite this good performance, the plan is about 72% funded. And when we are looking to have our new actuarially determined contribution. So every 2 years, our actuary performs a calculation that says this is where we think your contribution should be in terms of your discount rate. So Michelle and Hannah's been working with Bolton and making their projections, and PNC projects out and they say, well, here's what we anticipate returns to be, and here's the weighted measures, the percent of your portfolio in each of the categories. But Bolton looks at things and they say, well, they look out 20 years. And when they determine a discount rate, they're saying at the discount rate that we establish, in 20 years, the goal was to be 100% funded. So it's not that we will be funded necessarily more quickly than that. And it's good to know there's an inverse relationship between the discount rate and an ADC. So when the final discount rate is determined, if it ends up being less than our current discount rate of 6.8, then our ADC will actually increase. So we're going to find out here in the next 2 weeks whether or not, as we approach fiscal 26, whether or not we have to move to a higher contribution. Right now, I believe we're at 19.4% of participant salaries. And so we'll find out in the next 2 weeks whether or not we need to increase that. But the performance certainly helps because there's only 2 ways, again, to raise the level and get above 72%. I personally, and working with Michelle and the PNC team and the Bolton team, in our conversations, it's like, boy, it'd be nice if we could get to 85% in the next few years. So we have to keep growing this, both through contribution and performance. So I'll stop there and again, just thank the PNC team.
Okay. You bring up one question, Mr. Town Manager, and that is, do you know where we were several years ago, 4 or 5 years ago, in terms of percent funded?
We were just a few percentage points down. And so we've had staff turnover,
Mm-hmm.
and that changes the calculations and everything that Bolton makes.
Sure.
But I believe when I started, we were in the high 60s, and now we're in the low 70s.
Okay. That sounds good. Thank you very much. Making some progress, but probably need to ramp up the speed. And I presume I can get this from a previous slide, but maybe in order to get from 72 to 85%, if we did it as one lump sum, how much would that be?
From my conversations with Bolton, you're probably talking an infusion now of $2 million.
Okay. Very good. Thank you. That answers some of my questions. Okay. Thank you very much to the presenters and PNC for the hard work you're doing. And let's move along on the agenda. Thank you.
Thank you for having
Thank
us.
you so much for the opportunity.
Thank you.
Okay, the next item on the rearranged agenda is fiscal year 2026 budget revenue, fiscal year 2025 estimated actuals, and 2026 projections. Go ahead.
We have Deputy Director Jones, who's going to share with the mayor and council tonight. Mr. Jones.
Thank you, Mr. Listician. Excuse me. So yes, tonight's presentation, we will be covering revenue, particularly the fiscal year 2025 estimated actuals and the fiscal year 2026 projected revenue. Next slide, please. So this slide right here, it should look familiar. This slide is the 5-year projection that was published in the current fiscal year 2025 budget book. So our fiscal year 2026 forecast, is actually very, very close. We're actually off by less than $7,000 compared to the total projected figure of 11,393,081. So I'll go into more detail on this in the following slides. But while that variance is less than 0.03%, and very impressive, we'd like to highlight that it's really only half of the story. In the coming weeks, the next presentation, we will address the projected expenditures. At this stage of the budget process, we're currently still facing a $400,000 shortfall. So yeah, our revenue has been projected fairly accurately, but again, as we move through the budget process, we still are $400,000 in the hole. Next slide, please. So here we have all of the revenue categories that we use for our projections. Local taxes, licenses and permits, administrative fees, fines and forfeitures, community safety programs, reimbursements, grant revenues, and transfer in. Next slide, please. So this slide shows the fiscal year 2025 year-to-date actuals. Then we have the next column, the fiscal year 2025 budget, and the next column would be the corresponding percentage of the budget used so far. Next columns show the fiscal year 2025 estimated actuals, and the last would be the fiscal year 2026 projected revenue for the upcoming budget. So from a revenue perspective, the town is currently at 86.75% of its budgeted revenue for fiscal year 2025. And that's with roughly 4 months left in the fiscal year. We do expect to reach our budgeted amount, actually exceeding it by a little bit, by 2.2%. We have a total of 11,432,170, which is 253,000 above what we had budgeted. One thing we'd like to make note of is that in order for us to have balanced the fiscal year 2025 budget, we did require an additional $555,598 in transfers. So if we didn't have these transfers, then the revenue would have fallen short of what we had for a budget. And relying on transfers to balance the budget isn't really sustainable, nor is it ideal. So while we have exceeded our budget amount, we just want you guys to know that we did rely on transfers to balance the budget. So we don't want that to be misleading. As we look ahead for fiscal year 2026, the total projected revenue is $11,389,815. And this is an increase of 1.9% from the fiscal year 2024 budget. And again, we still are fairly early, not early, but we still have a lot of work to do with the budget. So the figures that we have here are provisional, and we do expect them to change as we continue to refine the budget. And as I mentioned earlier, we're still working on the expenditure side at this point. Again, facing a $400,000 deficit, and we will cover that in depth in a future presentation. So yeah, at this point, that concludes the fiscal year 2025 estimated actuals revenue and the fiscal year 2026 projected revenue. And if there are any questions or comments regarding this, I'd be happy to answer.
Council members, questions or comments? Okay. Any members of the public who have questions or comments? I have one question, which is the projection of community safety programs. That's sort of one it's a big ticket item, and we're at 57.5% round numbers. And is that projecting that we will meet the budgetary goal at the end of the cycle, which of course is a month or two past the end of the calendar fiscal year?
Yeah, so we expect to be within like 99%, maybe a little bit more. We've been very conservative with our estimated actuals. We do expect to exceed it, but just in the event of anything that may come up, we've remained conservative. But we do anticipate meeting what we had for fiscal year 2025 budget amount.
Okay, thank you.
Mr. Mayor, if I may.
Councilmember Lingua, go ahead.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I had the same question about community safety programs, and my other part B of that question is when I'm looking at the over there on the right side for 25 and 26, the 2.1, and then going to 2.6, and how even with that substantial increase, we're still looking at a slightly lower total revenue in 26, and I know it's early, than for 25. Combine that with the line item for 4,700 grant revenues. In light of what is going on, both down along Pennsylvania Avenue, as well as what's happening in Annapolis in terms of possible budget adjustments. Is there anything else staff would care to share about that projected number for 26?
Yeah, sure. And I'm sorry, I should have went a little bit more in depth. So, if you look at the total 4900 transfer in number, I mentioned it in the previous slide, but we actually needed to transfer in 555,000. At this point, we haven't calculated that line for fiscal year 2026. We're going to do everything that we can to get the budget balanced without having to transfer as much as we did in fiscal year 2025. But yeah, that made up a very large portion of the budget in 25. But we're still at this point in the budget process where we haven't calculated what we need to transfer into budget to balance the budget.
And Mr. Jones, just for clarity, in the past, we've brought money in from our OPEB line item, from our health and wellness line item to help pay for healthcare. We brought money that was originally ARPA funds, and we brought some of that money over as well. So there's a number of funds that have supported the operating budget in the past. And
That's
go ahead, sir. I'm sorry.
the point that you're making about 4,700 line item.
Well,
revenues.
yeah, the grant revenues. Mr. Jones, can you explain what's in that 308 number?
Yeah, so the reason why we kept that consistent is kind of what you had mentioned earlier, Councilman Lingua. With the uncertainty that we have, we didn't want to increase that thus far at this point of the budget. So we have an estimated actual of the 308,254, and we kept that consistent at this point for fiscal year 2026.
Can you explain what's in that number, Mr. Jones? Is that the state police aid and things like that?
Yes, that is, and I can pull up what specifically we have in there. But yeah, state aid for police, that is one. That's actually one of the larger grant revenues that we have there.
That's nearly 170,000. It's like it's right around 170,000 of that is coming from the state police aid.
Okay. I mean, just based on what I'm hearing about what's happening in Annapolis and being the unpredictability about what can happen down along Pennsylvania Avenue. And again, granted, I know it's early, and that number might change. I'm just concerned about if, I'm thinking very bad case scenario that a lot of these, a number like that grant revenue being substantially lower.
Well, and that is something that
How would we pivot on?
Mr. Jones, if I could answer that one.
Go right ahead.
Not easily, sir. As Mr. Jones and Mr. Smith and the entire staff leadership team have heard me say, losses like that are not made up in paper clips. And so right now, I think as a placeholder, the 308 is okay for February 24th. What we're going to learn about the state police aid here in the next 2 weeks. The only federal money, and Mr. Jones helped me out here, that would be our COPS grant for like $46,000. And there may be some lesser federal money there, but it would just be in maybe tens of thousands. So the lion's share of this is coming from the state. We have not heard anything about the state cutting state police aid or anything. I think once we get to CIP, you'll see we're being more conservative on potential grant funds.
Okay. Well, let's.
This is going to be a tight.
Let's hope for the better. Let's hope for the better.
Well, and I mean, this is an opportunity for us to share with you all what Mr. Jones and Mr. Smith and I and the staff leadership team have been talking about. This is going to be a tight budget year, and we shared a number of weeks ago that the uncertainty going into this budget is going to be on par, if not more uncertainty than we had in March of 2020 with COVID and everything shutting down, and we weren't sure how that was going to work out. There's a lot of uncertainty here, and we're still waiting for numbers. And when we talk about expenses next week, we're still waiting for numbers. I mentioned the defined benefit plan. We're still waiting for the healthcare numbers. We're still waiting for the workers' compensation numbers. Those are numbers that are just going to be handed to us. It's not like we're able to say, oh, well, let's make an adjustment here. What we're going to be told what those numbers are in terms of the expenditures. And then we're going to have to react to that and make adjustments. And I think that actually, when Mr. Jones here in a few minutes goes over the constant yield notice, I think that'll tie in nicely to what's being discussed here so far.
Okay. I appreciate that. Thank you.
Okay, let's continue.
Mr. Jones.
Yes, so next slide, please. Actually, I think it's 2 slides though. Yeah. Thank you. So here we have the fiscal year 2025 constant yield tax rate certification. This document certifies the assessable property values for Riverdale Park and provides the official constant yield tax rate for fiscal year 2025 as well. Staff used this sheet to help with guiding the budget committee with producing the up and coming budget, as well as assist with any tax decisions. So some of the key points we'd like to highlight in this certification is line 10, which is the net assessable real property base. So after factoring in new construction and partial year abatements and deletions, the net base is reported at $851,517,024, which is up from $851,956,453 from the previous fiscal year. Another highlight for the constant yield rate certification sheet would be line 13, and this is the fiscal year 2025 constant yield tax rate. So this certification established a constant yield tax rate of 0.6749 per $100 of assessed value. Two important items that we'd like to also discuss that are not directly listed on the certification is one, the current town gross real property tax rate. So the town's current rate set by the mayor and council for fiscal year 2025 is a rate of 0.6890 per $100, which is slightly above the constant yield rate. But again, as I mentioned before, even at this current rate, we still have an estimated $400,000 shortfall for fiscal year 2026. So if we were to lower the rate to the constant yield rate that we have here on the sheet, that could potentially widen the deficit to roughly around 700,000 based off of our initial projections. So while the assessable base is rising, we won't see any of that revenue gain unless we keep the tax rate constant or raise it above its current level. The other portion I'd like to mention that's not listed here is the Calvert tract, which is excluded from the 2025 constant yield tax rate certification. So the Calvert tract does not appear in this certification. And based off of what we did receive, there was actually a reduction in the assessable base for the Calvert tract, roughly 566,000. So at this point, we are examining exactly where these values have dropped. Likely suspect that it is coming from the commercial properties. So at this point, we are considering some adjustments for the commercial tax rate at this point. But yeah, that covers pretty much everything for the constant yield. John, I see you.
Yeah, if I can just add a few highlights here. So Mr. Jones has shared with us that the assessable base has grown by $48 million. If you apply the tax rate of 0.689 to that extra value of $48 million, the yield on there is $330,000. The town's annual payroll is right around $5 million. If you figure the step and merit increases, you figure COLA, you're going to eat up 2/3 of that extra money just in salary increases. It's not increases in healthcare. It's not increases in retirement contributions. It's not increase in the price of gas, vehicle maintenance, any of that. 2/3 of that additional revenue will be eaten up just in dealing with the administration of salaries. And Mr. Jones also shared we really have to dig deep into what's happening with our assessable base. We know there were a number of commercial appeals, large commercial appeals. The Raytheon building had an appeal of their value. We have to take a look at that. Lots of the multifamily buildings have appealed. So we really got to dig in, and Director Barnes is coordinating with the state to get us the report we need. The initial report they sent over didn't give us previous year numbers, so we could make comparisons of the data. So we hope to get a fresh report in the next 2 days and really drill in on what's happening where. If the commercial properties are paying less of their portion that they've paid in the past for the town's operations, then at that point, the mayor and council may want to consider bifurcating tax rates and having different rates for commercial properties versus residential properties in order to ensure the longer term sustainability of the town.
Thank you, Mr. Town Manager. Councilmember Smith, go ahead. Did we lose him?
No, he's muted, sir.
Sorry. I'm wondering if that drop in the accessible base for the Calvert track might be related, and this may be laughable, so feel free to laugh at me, but to us taking possession of the roads, since that would be square footage that was previously privately owned property that is now publicly owned property.
I don't believe so, sir. The value of the roads were never assessed. They were dedicated, and we merely accepted the dedication.
Okay. Thank you.
Any additional council questions or comments at this time? Councilor Minion, go ahead.
My first question is the additional like 50 million or so from the accessible tax real property base. Was it higher or lower than what the town was expecting? And I think it's helpful to getting the context of it's, you know, most of it is eaten up by just COLA and sort of the cost of living adjustments and things like that, just for salary. I'm sort of curious about if the total increase was lower. And then when town manager mentioned the like protests or you know, like the
appeals.
What's the process behind that? Is that you appeal and that's the number you get all appeals are automatic, or is there a time where the town has to like lobby? And I'm just curious in terms of like some clarity on what that process looks like.
So in response to your first question, in the budget book, and I don't have this in front of me, Mr. Jones, if you have the current budget open, perhaps you can find where we showed there's a table that shows the growth of the accessible base by percent, and it highlights the years where the triennial reassessment occurred. And so it's probably in the first section of the budget book. My recollection tells me that reassessments, I think we averaged maybe averaged about 4%. We had some years where we had the accessible base contract. And I just did a very quick calculation and took 48 million divided by the 851 million, and it's 5.5% about increase. And so seeing that type of an increase, that's a higher increase than I think we were anticipating. If you just look at the history, but if you look at our 5-year projection of revenue, we're pretty spot on. So there's two different ways of looking at it. You can look at the history of the increases, and this exceeds the history. But when we did our own math, we said that this is the number that we anticipate for next year, and we calculated it out. We came pretty close. What I'm surprised by, frankly, is that, and I'm not saying that COVID doesn't exist, right? But we saw and we anticipated contractions during COVID in the commercial sector. Harder to have retail, office values dropping, sure. But this reassessment just occurred this fall. And to see a contraction still happening, the stickiness of that contraction, I'm a little surprised by. For example, that the Calvert track overall would lose value. And that 48 million increase that we saw outside of the Calvert track, we didn't have any developments being added. There's not new buildings. We can't point to a new building and say, oh, there's 30 million of the 48 million. That 48 million is spread across all other parcels. And some of which went up in value, which I believe are the residential units, and some went down in value, which I believe are the commercial properties. And that's why I'm suggesting that, well, we're going to do a thorough analysis, but the town may either in this year or the next year want to seriously look at doing what other jurisdictions have done and set different rates for different types of properties.
Okay.
I hope that in part answers your question, sir.
Yeah, I mean, I have questions, but we'll need that analysis to sort of answer those. But yes, you answered the question in terms of, I guess the last question that wasn't answered was just this appeals process.
Oh, yes.
How does that like?
So it's with the state. So the state reassesses the property. There's a county office of the state that does the reassessments. So it's the Department of Assessment and Taxation. There's a formal process whereby property owners can appeal. Typically, you see the appeals coming from commercial properties. And the typical argument is that they have a particular vacancy rate, or they had to lower their rent in order to attract tenants, things of that nature. And the town does receive a notification that properties are have been appealed. Historically, we haven't, and we would have to contract with someone. Myself nor the staff team are qualified to go and argue against an appeal. But we would have to hire someone to conduct an analysis and argue against it. But I really want to see if there's a trend among the commercial properties or just a few outliers. And then report that back to you all.
Thank you.
Okay, any additional council questions? I have one, but I'll hold off if somebody else has one. And for that matter, if there's any public questions at this time, please jump in. So my question is about line 9, estimated abatements and deletions, and any insight that you have on that number, because this sort of feels like 5 steps forward, 3 steps back, and so where does that number come from? And if we're really expecting that, and we might be able to whittle it down by hiring someone to argue on the other side, then that seems like it's a reasonable thing to do, because if we're getting 360,000, I think is the number you said, from 50 million of increase, then there's a couple $100,000 there that's walking away from us. And if we could whittle that down with $10,000 or $20,000 of investment, then that would be perhaps worth it.
And for tonight, Mr. Mayor, we don't have that answer for you.
Okay.
That's something that we want to investigate as well. And we need the state to tell us how they've come up with that. They may have already been heard from property owners, from, my guess is, the commercial property owners, saying that they're going to appeal, and they allow for those types of deletions.
Okay. And do you know how that number compares to previous estimates?
Mr. Jones, can you take a look at the constant yield in the current budget book and see what line 9 looked like previously?
It was 17,693,485 in the previous constant yield notice.
So almost double.
And do you know how it compared at the last triennial reassessment?
So you'd go back 3 years.
I don't have that right in front of me.
So you'd be looking
Well, that was 2022. So, you know, that's there's a lot going on then that
Yeah.
can't be compared. Okay, I'll dig through my records back to 2019. I'm not going to ask you to dust off the 6-year-old books to see, but just an interesting question. Okay, if there's no other questions, then we should continue on with the presentation.
I think that's all we have. Mr.
Oh.
Jones, did you have more to add?
Nope, that was it. Yep.
Okay, so any final questions before we move on the agenda? Okay, thank you, Deputy Director Jones. Thank you, Mr. Town Manager. Not the best of news, but it's always good to at least know what's going on as early as we can. So appreciate that. If I'm keeping track of my confused agenda, then next item on the agenda is the mayor's report. The only report I have is that I got a COVID vaccine booster on Saturday afternoon and was knocked out all day yesterday. I wasn't expecting that. I don't know why I wasn't expecting that, but I wasn't. And so I did not do much prep, and so don't have much of a report this evening except for that. We'll remind everyone, I guess, is that the petitions to be on the ballot for the May election are due Thursday at 5 p.m. And so please, if you are thinking of running, pay attention to that deadline and try to get it in. And that concludes my report. Pass it on to Mr. Town Manager.
Yes, Mr. Mayor, and just to expand briefly on your point about the deadline, Director Barnes has reminded me that the candidate filing deadline is Thursday, the 27th, 5 p.m. The Board of Elections will meet at 5:30 to review the candidate packets. The Ethics Commission will meet at 8 p.m. to review the financial disclosure forms. We still need volunteers to serve as election judges and members of the Board of Election Appeals. Staff have contacted all previous election judges and members of the Board of Election Appeals to see if they would be interested in serving again. Staff have also contacted the county election judges who are TRP residents. And so, if anyone's listening or anyone knows someone who may serve in one of those roles, please direct them to Director Barnes. Registration is now open for the MML Summer Conference. The conference is being held in Ocean City, June 22nd to the 25th. And also let Director Barnes know about that. Reminder about some upcoming meetings. Tuesday, March 18th is the State of the Town. And this year we have 3 budget public hearings, April 19th and April 24th, which is a Thursday evening, I believe, and then April 26th. The last thing is cybersecurity awareness training. All staff and members of the council should have received an email on February 1st regarding the town's cybersecurity awareness training, and please complete that training as soon as possible. That's all I have, Mr. Mayor.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Town Manager. Let's move on to Council Committee and Ward reports, starting with Councilmember Smith, Ward 1.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I don't have much tonight. As usual, just general thank you to staff for everything you do to keep the town running. One bit of unexpected welcome news this morning when I got to my office is found out my new neighbor in the office is Council Member Stoltzfus from Mount Rainier. So if anyone needs information from the council in Mount Rainier, I know where to find somebody and I can get you an answer real quick. That's all I have for this evening. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you, Councilmember Smith. Councilmember Foe, Ward 2.
I hope that everyone is well this evening, and I will reserve the remainder of my comments for next week's legislative. Thank you.
Thank you for that extraordinarily short report, Councilmember Foe. Councilmember Lingua, Ward 3.
Give you a report.
Was that even shorter?
I
That's
think,
amazing.
I think it was.
Wow. Okay, I think that's a record short report. Moving on to Councilmember Inyang, Ward 4.
I'm gonna go for 10 minutes just to even it all out. Not much. The one thing is I know there was I believe it was a water main that was broken on like the Village Green on like Rhode Island Avenue and Van Buren. There's like a huge puddle. There's a couple cones out there. And I know when it got cold earlier in the week, it was like freezing. It's like the only part of the town that has the street looks like it still has like a snowbank on it as it's frozen. Neighbor of mine fell and broke his arm on a scooter. And so just wondering, I've seen some WSSC trucks out there, but the water's still there. So I just want to make sure where the town is aware of it. If there's like a timetable in terms of when that will be fixed, is one. And a more positive note is was talking to Kendra, who's the head of Bikram Yoga. They are celebrating 11 years in the space, and they have an expansion, and they're having an event on Saturday. They're having stuff all day on Saturday, but I think 6 to 9 or 6 to 8 is where they'll have like a kind of an event in the space. And so she asked about she saw on the town website of like the ribbon cutting thing that the town does for milestones. I don't know if we have, I was like, I'll bring it up. I don't know if we have a couple ribbons in the back or do those need to be ordered ahead of time? I'm like, it's the week of, but any event, I'm gonna try to get a flyer from her or something like that we can share with this group to get the word out there. But as folks know, they were one of the early staples in town center and have sort of been a big factor in the revitalization of that area. And they've expanded into a place that's never been built out in that building before. And so, I think that they're, any opportunity as a town that we can sort of support the work that they're doing would be, I think, appreciated on their side. I know folks have been interested in Call Your Mother. I think it's as I pass by it, it's extremely popular. And so, I think it's a reminder of, if there are opportunities for businesses to come in that have like a good following and sort of meet the demographic of sort of what's needed in the area, they can be, I think highly successful. And it just makes me think about, are there other opportunities? What are other needs or other things that, we could, try to encourage, the powers that be developers in the area to consider, look out for. And I'm not sure what the existing process is for stuff like that, but I've had a couple folks come up and just be like, what else is there? Like, you could have asked anyone who lived here. There was clear there was like a very limited breakfast options. And so it seems like a no-brainer. I wonder if we, got a sense of other communities and asking residents, like, what's the one thing that's a no-brainer? It might be an interesting perspective if the town can hold that as a way to try to bring a more united approach to potential investors or developers or whoever sort of looking to invest, by the town sort of weighing in. I'm not sure if the town is active in that way, but something to think about. Something I've been thinking of as I stayed in the very quick lines that move and Call Your Mother, waiting for my bagel. And that's it. That's where I'll yield the rest of my time.
Thank you, Councilor Yang. I appreciate that report. I attended the soft open of Call Your Mother and enjoyed my bagel, but I haven't been back yet. Mainly because that early in the morning, I'm mostly just thinking about coffee. I'll just tell you the truth. But I know they have lunches, and so maybe I'll try to get there on early Saturday afternoon someday. See how it goes.
And Mr. Mayor, can I respond to the council member briefly?
Sure.
Councilmember Yang, Director Lewis will follow up with WSSC. We'll get something set out to the entire council, whether or not whatever update that we get from WSSC. And then Director Lewis, if we can make sure our crews continue to watch temperatures and lay down some salt for any water that's pooling there.
Sorry.
And then Director Barnes will follow up in Mr. Shelton's absence with Bikram Yoga. We do have an established program celebrating business where we have large scissors and ribbon and that sort of thing. And we also try to promote those things. So Director Barnes, if you could follow up with that, and we'll get back with you on that as well, sr.
Thank you.
Mr. Mayor, if I can chime in on the water main break. I did speak with Cape Fritz property manager, Paul, I forget his last name. He actually took the lead in contacting WSSC. And he had asked DPW if we could salt the roads, because of course they were icy because of all of the water draining onto the roadway. So we should have salted it several times since the water main break occurred. In fact, I thought at this point it had been addressed by WSSC, but admittedly I hadn't heard differently. But I was briefed on what the problem was, and it is Cape Fritz's responsibility to follow up with WSSC, because as you mentioned, it is in the village green, not within the public right of way.
Thank you.
It's a little bit disappointing that a brand new water main is having problems, but you know, that's most of the ones that break are ancient, and this one's new.
Mostly WSSC has said once it reaches a certain cold temperature, we're going to have water main breaks. They've been actually holding regular meetings, given the colder temperatures recently.
Oh yeah, I understand. Councilmember Linguist, your hand is up.
Yes, thank you, Mayor. Thank you very much. Speaking of ice mitigation, I'm sure the residents along the 5900 block of Taylor and on downwards, the residents accessing Taylor from Nicholson and Madison would greatly appreciate if DPW could address the ice that was forming there with some salt as well.
Absolutely, sir.
If we continue to have days like today, then the ice will not be a problem, but I think we're going to have a cold snap again.
We still have 3 more weeks, and old Phil said we're getting sick, so Phil saw.
The groundhog is not such a good predictor, but we'll see what happens. Okay, with that little bit of a delay, Councilmember Kellogg, Ward 6. Councilmember Mejia, I contacted her earlier about attendance, and she did not respond, so I don't think she's going to be joining us. So Councilmember Kellogg.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I have a series of reports that my people in the area, they report to me, like Greenway Drive and Jefferson. In fact, one house in the Jefferson that whenever it is rain, the parking lots that is here where these guys, they go and mess up all that areas. That parking lot is, the parking lot is higher than their backyard. So the rain is coming, taking all over their backyard water. Then, in that Greenway Drive, they were reporting to me that whenever people are coming there to mess up all that field until their area. So when they call the police don't come. When they report, they don't care. And I told them, I said, well, hence, I'm the one who's presenting you guys here now. I say, I will report this thing to the council, the mayor and council and the town manager. So they were happy to hear that from me, see, because all those who were all the past council members and others, they don't care. See, when they call them, they report, or they call the police, they don't show up. So I said, well, I will try. I say, and like the other 54th, that corner, the place is too dark for them. I have been saying this about that light. They reporting that to me all the time. So I don't know what are we going to do for them. Then they said, whenever they make a report, nobody don't care. I said, well, it's going to be changed. Hence I'm here. I will go all out to make sure that your demand is seen to. So that is all, Mr. Mayor. But let me inform you, before I hand over to you, the first is going to be the month of Ramadan. I don't know if you can be able, and the council and the town managers can give me an excuse like last year. Let me take care of my month of Ramadan. So thank you.
I would be happy to add that to the agenda next week. I understand that Ramadan starts this Friday. Is that correct?
Yeah, the first. Friday, we're going to pray in the night. In the morning, Saturday morning, we start.
Okay. And so, so I apologize for getting the date wrong. I know it was sometime at the end of this week, towards the end of this week. I'm pretty sure the council will do that, and I will bring it up on the agenda to give you excused absences during the month of March, so you can observe Ramadan.
Thank you, sir.
Okay, Mr. Town Manager, do you have any responses to the other issues raised by Councilmember Kellogg?
I do. So the lights will be installed. Director Lewis is working with Pepco on that. And I'm going to ask that Chief Turner, Chief, if you could contact Councilmember Colon outside of this forum and get the contact information for the folks that have concerns, and have someone reach out to those residents directly.
Sure.
Appreciate it, Chief.
Okay, thank you. It's always a little bit disappointing to hear things, and I appreciate the police following up. And we're getting the lights in as quickly as we can, Councilmember Kellogg. We have been a very good advocate for that, and we're working as fast as we can to get them in.
Thank you, sir.
Okay, that concludes council committee and ward reports. That brings us to public comments. Are there any public comments? Don't see any microphones unmuting, so I assume that means there are none. And that brings us to work session discussion items. First one, fence permit request 6313 Taylor Road.
Good evening, Mayor Thompson and members of the council. No action is requested this evening. Staff are seeking direction from the mayor and council regarding a fence permit for 6313 Taylor Road. The request is for a 6-foot wood fence in the backyard. Staff received an application, a permit application from Ms. Courtney Smith, who is here tonight to talk about her fence or to answer any questions that you may have. Keith, if you could scroll down to the following pages, there are some pictures of the backyard, and so you can see where the fence will go. There is currently a chain link fence, and my understanding is that is not being removed as part of the project because it doesn't belong to the property owner, but a brand new, lovely 6-foot wood fence will be going in. It appears that the applicant has met all of the requirements as they have received a county permit, and everything looks good. Ms. Smith,
Councilmember Foe?
sorry.
Councilmember Foe, do you have any thoughts on the application?
No, anytime we can see a cedar fence go up, we like it. It looks like a beautiful addition to the town. I spoke to Ms. Smith in this meeting and just asked to make sure that she speaks to neighbors, and she said she already has spoken with neighbors who would be impacted by the fence build. Does staff see any reason why this shouldn't be on the consent agenda next week?
No.
All right, I would like to see this on the consent agenda then, Mr. Mayor, if possible.
Okay, if I could ask, let me get the drawing up for a moment. So it appears that there are side chain link fences. So the picture that's on the screen right now must be on the property line. Ms. Smith, are those at least going to be taken out?
So the sides where you see the gates, those will be taken out. The ones along like the sides in between our houses will not, because those were determined by our contractor not that we don't own those. So I have no right to take them out. So our fence will just be built inside of our property line.
Okay, I appreciate that, but I just saw those chain links and I was like, they have to be going out, and so I appreciate the clarification there.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Mayor.
And have you given the neighbors enough advance notice that they might think about taking out the chain link fence as part of this process, or are they like the chain link and they want to keep it?
I believe they like the chain link and would like to keep it because the rest of their fence around their property is also chain link.
Okay, very good. Mr. Town Manager, does the grant program for chain link fence removal still exist? Still funded? I see Director Barnes nodding her head. If staff could please reach out to the two neighbors and let them know that that exists and that we might be able to help them remove those if perhaps cost was impacting the neighbors' desires, just to see if we can do it. It's always nice, and I certainly know in the years where I've had to deal with fences that you have a chain link fence next to a wood fence, then there's a lot of weeds that grow up, and it's quite a pain to deal with them. And so it might be that if we could cut the cost piece of it out, that they might be interested in doing that. Okay. Unless there are objections from other members of the council, then I will put this on the consent agenda for next week. And I don't expect any because you guys never do. Okay, let's move on to work session discussion item number 2 for fence permit request for 6209 Beale Circle.
Good evening again, Mayor Thompson and members of the council. This is an additional fence permit request for 6209 Beale Circle. This project does include the removal of chain link fencing, and the applicant has received the link as of today for that grant program that you were just speaking of. It appears that the applicant has met the requirements. They've obtained a Prince George's County permit for the project, and it's always fits the values of the town to remove some of the chain link fencing and to put up a beautiful wood fence. So just reporting that all the administrative requirements have been met for the project.
Okay, and this is in Ward 1. So Councilmember Smith, any thoughts?
No, Mr. Mayor, I do not. Just as others have said, always love to see chain link coming up and a nice wood privacy fence going in. So this sounds great to me. Looking forward to it.
Okay. Staff, is this the property where we granted a lot coverage many years ago? This is just idle curiosity, lot coverage for extended driveway. Is that correct?
I believe you're correct, Mayor Thompson. I actually just looked that up right before the meeting tonight.
Okay, just curious about that, but okay. Is the applicant here or not?
Yes.
Okay, just wanted to say that Councilmember Smith, have you had a chance to reach out to the neighbors yet or not?
I have not, Mr. Mayor.
Okay, so unless we hear from the neighbors, I should have said this to Ms. Smith, she's still here, that unless we hear back from neighbors that there's an issue, then this will go on the consent agenda and we'll fly through. And if we do hear back from neighbors, we'll try to give you at least a day or so's warning that perhaps you should come back to talk to us. So, but other than that, you shouldn't need to attend next week.
Thank you.
Okay. Unless there's any additional council discussion, which it doesn't look like, then let's move on to work session discussion item 3, Municipal Center update.
Good evening, Mr. Mayor and council members. We're not asking for any council action on this item. Instead, it's my pleasure to provide the update to the council on the status of the Municipal Center project, outstanding work to be completed, and the anticipated completion timeline. I'm happy to report that to date, most of the original scope of work has been completed. In Town Hall, that includes the 2 multi-purpose rooms or bump outs off the council chambers, a new storefront entrance and a brick patio in front of the council chambers between the new bump outs, a new glass front storefront at the main Town Hall entrance, upgraded public restrooms, a new front counter with bullet-resistant glass, a new kitchenette, reconfigured office space, and a new ADA-compliant restroom and reconfigured space in the space behind the council's dais. The rear connecting hallway between Town Hall and PD is also in, but we're awaiting alternative flooring. We had initially selected vinyl tile, but realize now all-weather carpeting is more appropriate for that location, given the access to the back of the building. And that space is also awaiting fire alarm equipment. In the police department, the completed work includes a new storefront into the building, a new interview room that replaced one of the 2 restrooms in the lobby. The other lobby restroom is now ADA compliant. Office space on the first floor has been reconfigured. And of course, the major second floor expansion has been completed, as has upgrades to the restroom and locker rooms for both men and women. To date, there have been 12 change orders. Almost half of them have been add-ons that weren't anticipated at the start of the project. The other half were in response to unknown conditions that were discovered when walls and flooring were removed. One additional change order is pending for new work, including replacing the ceiling tiles and lights in the council chambers and the ceiling tile in the front office, in the office suite, and several smaller miscellaneous items. The fire alarm upgrades have been identified finally. I think you recall conversations we've had in previous meetings about there been some confusion or difference of opinions about what scope of upgrades are required for an existing building. We certainly have a way forward now. The design is nearly complete, and the town's third-party reviewer will review the design and present it to the county for approval. If the county has no issues, DPI will issue the fire alarm permit. We anticipate the permit within the next several weeks. We began the process for a temporary use and occupancy permit for Town Hall about 2 months ago, and we're still pursuing that option for any activity that needs to take place in Town Hall before the permanent temporary or permanent use and occupancy permit is issued. And finally, we anticipate that the project will be completely finished in about 7 weeks or by mid to late April. And with that, I'll take questions.
Thank you, Director Lewis. Council members, questions, comments? Councilmember Linguo, I see your microphone's open. Go ahead.
Thank you very much, Mr. Mayor. My one question: will we be able to hold the election in that building?
If the election is in early May, so
yes,
we anticipate being in the building but by the end of April, if not sooner than the end of April. And if not, the temporary occupancy or use and occupancy permit will be, if issued, will be in effect for 30 days, and we can continue to extend it or ask for an extension if in fact the project is not done. But I would say 85% confident that the project will wrap up by the end of April, in which case the building should be open for the election.
And if not, we'll have the temporary occupancy permit to cover that 15%.
Yes.
Okay, see that the microphone is muted. So any other council questions? Councilmember Inyang, go ahead.
And the work on, I know you mentioned sort of another change order, sort of miscellaneous stuff that's going to be longer ongoing past the 7 weeks, or you're saying that will be tied into the 7 week period
It's
from here?
Yes, it's within the 7 week. In fact, the contractor believes that work could be finished within 2 to 3 weeks. It's really the fire alarm upgrade that could take us to the very end of April, because everything is dependent on when we get the permit from the county. The upgrades are fairly simple if what's being considered or proposed is accepted.
Okay.
And so we think everything should be wrapped up by the end of April.
Okay. And then the other question is around, I know the cameras and stuff, I'm assuming that's going to be a longer, since we just talked about that. So that's probably a longer timeline, not tied with the building itself. The furniture and the council chambers, I know we talked about that, and I'm assuming that's been ordered and that's in place to coincide with the same opening, the end of April.
Yes, well, the Dias furniture is actually going to be installed, I believe, this Friday. And what was the second? It was the furniture, the seating, the assemblage seating should be ordered by next week. We're not sure of the delivery schedule, but we don't think it'll take beyond April. We think we'll get it within the time frame we're looking at to wrap up the project.
Thank you.
What's the audio-visual schedule?
So that's 8 to 10 weeks, and that is likely to be beyond April. There's no way that can be finished within that timeline.
Okay.
And so we can certainly resume activities in the council chambers without the AV equipment will not be installed at that time.
Okay. One final question, just drilling in on the details. The fire alarm design, you say, is with the third party at this time. Is that correct? Or will be?
It's still with the contractor's engineer. We anticipate it'll be ready to be submitted to the third party by the end of this week.
So the end of this week will be the third party. How long is it going to take them to get that to DPI?
It shouldn't take them very long. They've actually reviewed fire alarm information twice already. I expect it could be done within a week. I'll need to confirm that, but I wouldn't expect this much longer than that.
Okay. And the fire alarm has already been run in draft form past DPI and they're okay with it, or is it?
No, where we are now is the contractor's engineer is finalizing the design, or they're giving it the once over. It will be submitted to the third party reviewer. The third party will forward it to the county for review and hopefully issuance of the fire alarm permit.
Right, but we've been discussing the fire alarm issues for months, and I assume that everyone's pretty much in agreement at this point. Is that right, or we still
We
have a lot
can't
of
speak for the county. I would expect support from the third party reviewer. You can't say the county's DPI's activities and decisions are so unpredictable. We can't say.
But if I can chime in here, Director Lewis, the town hired a firm to review this situation and issue an opinion, and this is a fire engineering firm, on what's required.
Mm-hmm.
That then went to the contractor's engineer, who has made some modest tweaks to what it is that our firm said. Now they are designing this, and then they're gonna then send this back to the third party reviewer, which is different from the firm that we had to hire to tell us what needs to be in there. We had to keep the reviewer separate from the other firm. So we're actually engaged with two different fire professional firms. Is that correct, Director Lewis? Shaladia.
The third party reviewer has a
Yes.
fire alarm expert on their side. Yes.
And that's in addition to, is it Shaladia?
It is Shaladia that has a fire alarm expert on their team.
And but the other firm that we used to come up with a list of the upgrades.
So it's an independent firm
It's
unrelated to
Sika.
the review.
It's Sika, right?
Seeker does the inspections on work completed. Shaladia reviews design plans.
So but we got two fire firms, and then the contractor has their own firm. And we had to go down this road because we couldn't get past the contractor's firm. So we hired this second firm to then say, we've examined the code and here's what's required. And so it wasn't John Listician or Ivy Lewis saying, or even our architect, because our architect's involved in this too. So if you count them, we have three firms that the town has engaged to get this past the engineer for the contractor's fire person, who will then take that, present it back to the county for approval. We're close. But no, but
Yeah,
I mean, this has been a nightmare.
Yeah, and I can tell you from renovations that I was involved with in my day job that this seems to be standard practice, that you end up with, like, I'm exaggerating, of course, a little bit here, but you end up with five different firms weighing in on your fire alarm design, and all of them are trying to one up each other to make it safer and safer and safer. And it just delays things for months and months. So I understand. I just wish we had a little bit more certainty. And I'm honestly a little bit sad that it sounds like I'm not going to be able to chair a council meeting in this new space before my term runs out at the end of May. So, which I think is highly likely at this point. Honestly, I'm a little bit pessimistic, but I'm just highly likely that might happen.
I'm actually optimistic, and I don't like to disagree with my team in public, but there's 5 weeks in March. And so when I calculate 8 to 10 for the camera system, I'm thinking that camera system can be in maybe the first full week of May. So I'm thinking the end of May, Mr. Mayor, you'll be able to still chair a meeting.
Okay. Get my last work session in with the in the new space. That'd be nice. Okay. Councilmember Smith, you wanted to say something?
Oh, I just wanted to note thanks to the county for having such a great process here. It makes a lot of sense. It's easy to understand. It serves the needs. So thank you to everyone at Deep High for making this easy on us.
I think the transcribing system may not catch the sarcasm in your voice there, Councilmember Smith. But can't agree with you more. Okay, any additional discussion of this item? Okay, let's move on, skipping the written agenda, item 4 to item 5, curbside composting.
I have this item as well, Mr. Mayor. Staff is seeking council direction on the rollout and cost of curbside food waste collection.
If we could hold 1 second, we have the wrong memo pulled up here.
This should
it'd be number 5, Mr. Robinson. Thank you. Good, Director Lewis.
The current budget identifies funding or includes funding for 6 months or $24,000 for a curbside food waste collection program to serve the 1,300 units that are receiving trash collection. Staff reached out to Data Trucking, the town's trash hauler, and received 2 proposals. One is a curbside collection with a container for $54,600 annually, or $350 per household per month, or a curbside collection program without a container for $39,000 a year, or $2.50 per household per month. In this option, the town could either provide a container to residents or have residents provide their own container. Staff anticipates very low participation for the start of the program and possibly during the first several years. some recent or close examples are University Park, which has had a food waste collection program for about 10 years, and they only have achieved 40% participation. And Hyattsville, that percentage is higher. However, their service includes both curbside collection and I believe up to 10 or 12 drop-off locations throughout the community, primarily in their parks. Because we anticipate low participation, staff suggested a sliding scale approach to JADA that would tie collection fees to the level of participation, but this was not accepted by the company. There are several advantages to using JADA. They have a reasonably good track record in town, and of course, a knowledge of the route. Using JADA avoids having additional collection vehicles in town. And then food waste is collected with yard waste. So JADA may not need additional trucks to support this new program. And JADA can ramp up pretty quickly to implement the program. So we're seeking some guidance from the mayor and council on how to proceed to establish the program, given the cost and the very likely low participation for several years into the program. And with that, I'll take any questions you have.
Mr. Mayor,
I was muted. Councilmember Foe, go ahead.
Councilmember Smith raised his hand, so he can have.
Go for it. Go for it, Councilmember.
All right. Just looking at those costs, composting in my backyard has been a difficult but rewarding journey, recognizing that I can create for myself from my own garden. We're really taking big steps in accomplishing that our own. I feel like a buildup potentially could be drop-off locations. I've always perceived that as an idea that may potentially come before pickup. I don't know what the rest of the council would think. I would love to see investment potentially in a smaller grant program that allows people to access potential necessary equipment that they could to have better success with composting. I don't know. That just seems like, I don't want to say an exorbitant cost. It just seems like in these turbulent times, it seems potentially as a space where we could hopefully attempt to build up to this use. That's my thoughts right now.
Thank you, Councilmember. Councilmember Smith?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I'm wondering what is I don't have a yard, so I'm not sure how yard waste collection works. How does the pickup for that? Is it like included with our trash already? Like, just what happens there?
So if I may, I participate in the counties. I'm in an unincorporated area of the county, and I participate in their food composting program. The county provides a 30-gallon container and collects it, I believe, countywide on Mondays. It's a separate bin. The truck that collects from my development doesn't appear to also collect yard waste. That may be that truck's situation and not the situation countywide. But in our case, it will be collected with yard waste and can be disposed of with yard waste at the Yard Reclamation Center.
Do we as a town collect yard waste?
No.
We do. Once a week on Monday, yes, we do yard waste.
We have a contractor that collects yard waste.
I'm assuming that's what you're referring to.
Yes.
That our
Sorry, that's.
No, I just want to clarify, it's not staff. So
Right.
I apologize for that confusion, but the town staff doesn't collect it. We contract with JADA.
I'm sorry. I asked. My intention was to ask the question that Ms. Lewis answered. But you answered the question that I asked, Mr. Listician. Yeah, if it's going to be commingled and it's all going to go to the same place, I wonder why we wouldn't just advise residents to include compost in their yard waste.
Because it's a messy business. In fact, we should require, and the county does, I'm not sure that everybody complies, that the county provides actually a 2-gallon countertop pail and 2-gallon compostable bags for that. And then the 13-gallon for 2 bags they're expecting us to use. And that's what I use to keep the containers clean. What I did hear from Jada is that too many residents just dump their food scraps in either a bucket outside of a bag or with their yard waste. And those things that spill on the haulers or the helpers that dump the containers into the hopper, it's messy and it's smelly if not done correctly. And it's something that the haulers don't particularly like. Maybe I should speak for Jada. It's just such a messy business, and their staff complain when the gook flies back in their faces when they're trying to empty containers when the food scraps have not been bagged.
Thank you, Ms. Lewis. I am sympathetic to that argument. But also, as my colleague from the second ward mentioned, like, we're talking about $50,000. That's roughly half an FTE, right? To distribute some containers that arguably maybe 10% in the first year of our residents will use to assemble their compost that will immediately be commingled with yard waste and dropped off in the same place as yard waste. I'm a big fan of public composting programs. But this one seems, I mean, not this program, just like the options available of us to do it don't seem particularly efficient to me. Yeah, so that's what I would contribute to the discussion.
Councilman Moran, yeah, go ahead.
Yeah, I saw the cost per household, and I'm assuming that's just every household in town. I wonder how many of the like large multifamily housing will be using this. And I agree with the not just initially, but over the course of a few years. Drop off locations, if we want to do this, drop off locations make the most sense, I would say. Because I think if you distribute these bins to everyone, they'll probably end up being like extra recycling or whatever's necessary, and not necessarily used as intended. And then plus with the cost, I think it's I appreciate town staff sort of doing the due diligence and exploring what this is, so that we have like a better informed conversation about it. But yeah, I would also be in favor of not rolling this out as like a pickup service initially.
Additional council questions? Comments? Any public comments?
Mr. Mayor.
Mr. Councilmember Foe, go ahead.
Yeah, I believe this has been a point that the Green Team has brought up significantly, specifically Ms. Katz. I don't want to come across as anti-compost. You can come in my backyard and you can check and see. I believe fiscally this might not be our best way forward at this point. And I do want to advocate on behalf of potential, local investment in compost spinners or things that people in these, I assume, not single family homes, but I feel like these backyards where we can do this, we can create model programs where people are doing it successfully, and creating compost to use in their gardens. That's it.
Okay. I mean, the Green Team did a pilot program, which I don't know we ever got the final data analysis out of it, with, several dozen, I think, composting systems were given to residents for doing it in their backyard. And as I said, I don't think we got a final report out of them. One thing I do want to bring up is that at some event, I think it was maybe the Edmonston birthday party. Yes, Edmonston. Then I ran into a semi-commercial organization that did curbside composting that individual households could contract with. And so if an individual household wanted to do it, and it was close enough, then they would do it for the individual household. And I don't have that information readily available, but I can try to dig it up. I'm not sure whether I took one of their flyers or just tried to remember who it was. But it seems like if we're going to have a anticipated low uptake rate, that having the town perhaps sponsor that, because my memory is that it was perhaps I don't know, $10 or $15 a month for an individual household, and that's a lot more than the rates were being quoted by JEDA. But it is, if we're expecting a very low uptake rate, then that might actually be not that expensive. We're expecting 100 households to do it, then, and it was $10 a month, and that would be can't do the math in my head, but maybe $12,000 a year, so a lot less than the number that that's being quoted. So I may reach out and try to figure out if I can find that organization or that, and see if I can bring that back to the council for consideration, because it sounds like there's not a lot of support for rushing forward on the current plan. Councilmember Smith.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Just quickly, I want to add, co-sign what Councilmember Foe said. We compost in our house. We sneak down the street and drop it in the pickup point for this city of Hyattsville. But big supporter. I built a worm farm in my garage before, so I'm supportive of composting. I just don't know that it's right for our town. Secondly, to the point you were just discussing, Mr. Mayor, do you know if that vendor, if you actually get compost back from the vendor? So that's one thing I've heard from folks is if it doesn't, like, the direct benefit other than just like doing a good thing for your community and the environment, if you're not getting any compost back, like, it's just more stuff to have to separate in your garbage, right? But I think that would be, it sounds appetizing on its face, but even more so if there was any way that
Yeah, I don't remember. Honestly, I will be quite honest. I don't remember the answer. I just remember thinking, oh, I could do this while I'm waiting for the town to develop a program. And then I didn't do anything with it, but I do remember looking at it. And it may be in one of the piles of paper that's lurking near my chair, so I can try to dig through those first. But yeah, I can try to look into that. But I'm hearing from the council members here that there's not a lot of excitement for moving forward on 50,000 a year, and it also, it seems to me, particularly if we have a low uptake rate, that the 15,000 a year difference in price for container provided or not container provided, that seems like a no-brainer. So going for the 40,000 and purchasing containers seems like it might be a better deal, because if you buy people a pickle container from Home Depot, then that's $5. And if you only have 100 people doing it, then that's $500, and it's a lot different than 15,000. So I will reach out, try to dig through my stuff and see if I can bring that back. But it sounds like the council's not interested in moving forward. So I would suggest we not have this on our agenda next week. Ms. Katz.
Thank you, Mayor. Sorry, I thought I saw another hand up from a council member. So I wasn't putting my hand up yet, but I appreciate this conversation, and I agree with a lot of what the council members who have spoken about the cost, et cetera, have said already. I personally agree, but I wanted to touch on 4 points. First of all, why composting is important. Realizing that I'm not an expert in these facts, but these are the things that certainly can be checked on to reinforce what I'm saying is true, that a high percentage of our trash is organic waste. I think up to a third of it usually is. It is methane causing in the landfill, which is one of the big greenhouse gases. So the importance, why it's important, I just wanted to touch on that. even though our town is only, you know, the 4,000 some people plus that we have, it's significant in the big picture. Number two, Mayor, I think just one company, I believe there's others that actually seek out doing this. And like Director, like Ivy said, I certainly wouldn't want to have to be, I can really empathize with our trash collectors and that compost thing. But there are companies such as Compost Crew, that is just one. There are others that seek out this as their business model. They want to pick up compost. And unfortunately, I wish the staff had explored that as well. So that's one thing I would ask as a resident, which I think has kind of been mentioned here already by you, Mayor, to look at some other options as well. Number three, someone mentioned about drop-off locations. I think that's an outstanding idea and a great place to start. Because I happen to know that there are residents in this town that are paying companies like Compost Crew to pick up their compost. And so some of the people I've talked to are like, why doesn't the town compost? I'm having to pay out of my pocket to do the composting. So if we had some drop-off locations, that might be a compromise with people that are currently paying to compost, but could actually take their compost to a location. I think College Park did that for a while before they started, I think they're with the county's program on curbside, but they had one at their public works building. They had just one big 32-gallon or whatever the big trash size container, and they could actually track how much participation was going on. So one or more drop-off locations, if maybe that could be negotiated with JADA for a much more reasonable cost, I think that would be a great idea. And the other aspect of it, obviously, Councilmember Foe, backyard compost, that's great. I do. It is not for everyone. Totally understand that. So I think that's another really positive impact that this town could have with drop-off locations to support those that do want to do it so they don't have to pay for it, and to really encourage others to do it too. It's just bring it over here and dump it in this location. Anyway, so that's just some of the input I'd like to make on this topic. And I certainly do, the cost, yeah, does seem pretty high to me as well. I think we pay way too much for our trash collection, over $300,000, I believe, as it is. And I'd like to see that reduced over the future. I think there's a strategic approach to this whole trash, yard waste, organic waste, big picture here. And I really, really like our town to have a much more strategic approach in the future and think maybe 10 years down the road rather than just right here, right now. Okay, thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Katz. Mr. Town Manager, your hand is up.
Yes, Mr. Mayor. I wanted to provide some context for us bringing this to you all the way we did this evening. The discussion last spring when we were putting the budget together was for curbside composting. And staff didn't feel as though we had the flexibility to say, well, we're going to come in and just say, hey, let's move in a different direction. We first needed to hear the council's thoughts on what it is that we found out about curbside. We certainly can now take that and come back to you all as we work to finalize the budget on these different options, if the council's open to different options like that, and see what it is that can be afforded. So that's certainly something, if it pleases the council, that we can look at as we're finalizing the proposed budget.
Okay. I looked up, Compost Crew didn't have prices on their website, but Compost Cab was quoting a price of roughly $1 per day. If that was who I talked to, I don't remember who it was, then they said that of course that price could come down if they were servicing a nearby area or at bulk. And so it may be that we can whittle it down from that initial price. But as you say, there are services to do this, and that's another possible avenue for gauging interest and seeing how much participation we get. I'll also say that I'm surprised to hear that they are commingling yard waste and this because if I'm correct, then this was not just vegetable scraps, but like kitchen waste, and so that includes the evil of curbside composting meat scraps, and so I'm really surprised that, given what I've heard, that they would do that, because it seems like that would have to go into the county's or somebody's food capable composting system, which I know is hard. But maybe that's why the price tag's so high.
And Ms. Katz is trying to get your attention, Mr. Mayor.
Go ahead. What, I thought your hand was still up, but go ahead and speak.
You've taught me a long time ago to lower that hand when I'm done with it. And thank you, Town Manager Lestition. I just like to, for consideration by the council and potential flexibility for the staff, I'd like to offer up this idea as well, benefiting our commercial community, especially all the wonderful restaurants we have in town. I personally think there's a opportunity to support them with organic waste. I know that they aren't serviced by our JADA contract, and I'm under the impression that they have to pay for their own trash removal and that they have to pay their own tipping fees or whatever they're having to deal with, and that the tipping fees for organic waste are lower. So I don't know if it, just throwing it out there, I don't know if there's a way to support them with these locations for organic waste that they could take advantage of as well. And it would potentially be a win-win-win for them, win for us, win for the environment. So just wanted to throw that out there.
Thank you for that suggestion, Ms. Katz. Okay, staff have 5 different directions to go. Okay.
We'll investigate these different avenues and report back to you all.
Okay, very good. Are there any public comments before we move on the agenda? Don't see any, so let's move on to discussion item 6, commemorative naming.
Director Barnes.
Good evening again, Mayor Thompson, and members of the council and the community. This item is actually a follow-up to our last discussion at the previous work session in January, and then a discussion we had in the fall about the commemorative naming of parks in general, MNC PPC parks. So following the last discussion about potentially renaming 6401 54th Avenue, which is commonly referred to as the Boys and Girls Club, it became apparent that a process may be needed to actually name our or rename rather the building. So staff conducted research and found 3 examples that are attached to the cover memo tonight. One of which is the MNC PPC policy on the commemorative renaming of parks. So staff are just seeking feedback tonight on any elements of these processes that we would like to see in a town process, or if there's different direction from the council and you'd like to just move forward with some of the options that were discussed on at our last work session. So tonight we're just seeking any clarity on the commemorative naming of municipal property to include the buildings.
Thank you, Director Barnes. Council members, thoughts? It's a long document, 26 pages, a lot of different examples in there.
Yeah, I have homework to do. I just started to read about I think we should name the building for America.
Yeah. Mr. Mayor,
Councilmember Kalan, go ahead.
I have already gave this name the last time we discussed about it.
Okay.
I said Riverdale Convention Center. That's what I said.
I remember. And,
yeah. That's the easiest way, Riverdale Convention Center.
So this came up for the one building, but it brings up as to whether we should try to establish a process, and so that could be the name that we come up with for this one, but I think it is a good idea, at least in the long run, to come up with a process. But Thank you for that. Thank you for that suggestion. Councilmember Smith, go ahead.
Yeah, I just wanted to second the proposal from my colleague for Ward 6 to name the building the Riverdale Park Convention Center. I think that's a fantastic name for the facility.
Okay. Well, it implies a certain thing that I'm not sure is true. It's a pretty small facility. It's not can't have a whole
Well, Mr. Mayor,
convention.
people will be calling asking us if we could use their convention center, and we can say it might not serve your needs, but here are all the other wonderful things we have in our town.
So it's just a little bait to get them to contact us.
I mean, if there is a convention of, I don't know, I was hoping I'd think of a joke for 4 people before now, but I didn't. But yeah, I think it's great. That's fantastic.
Okay.
Mr. Mayor.
Councilmember Enyang, go ahead.
I'm glad that there is a process, at least thought has been put into from the county in terms of like naming of buildings and spaces. I know the renaming of public parks has been something I've talked about for a while. My question is, are these options? So are we forced to adhere? I read it as initially like this is the process that we have to adhere to. Are we saying that we could choose a different path because this is a town-owned building? Or is it not?
We absolutely can. I mean, the staff gathered together multiple possible processes from other municipalities, not even all in the state, but it's our property, and so we can put a sign out in front that says whatever we want.
Okay, no, that clarifies stuff. I didn't know if because of its proximity to the park, if we had to fall into that, but yeah, I think it's
And the process we adopt can also be used in making suggestions to MNC-PPC for renaming of some of the parks. So they're not all called Riverdale Neighborhood Park or Riverdale Community Park or Riverdale Park Community Park or Riverdale Park, whatever it is. It's
started. No, I agree. Yeah, I think a process that at the end of it should be able to, I think I'll take a step back. I agree with your point that we shouldn't have different naming processes depending on if it's a building or if it's like if we want to name something, we should go through a process and it should be able to hold up against some of the other processes that may need to feed into, even if it's not the exact same thing, but at least being able to show that like, yes, we've been as thoughtful and we considered whatever is necessary so that we don't make a suggestion to rename the Riverdale Park Community Park to something else, and then the county say, "Oh, you didn't do these 5 steps." I think would make sense. I haven't gone through it on a fine-tooth comb to see are there opportunities, or is it like is it doing the most for lack of a better term? But I wouldn't want something where we end up missing something where they're like that's great, but you didn't do this thing. So, but I think it makes sense to be somewhat mirrored or aligned with what the MMPBC has in terms of their requirements, since thinking longer term from not just this building, there may be a building on Baltimore Avenue, which we'll have to name, and then the parks are near and dear, but I don't know. There's a lot of new stuff that's happening, and the last thing I had was just around streets. Is that something that like where does that fall into? I'm thinking of the Natoli place. If depending on how that shakes out, if we end up creating a couple different streets and it's not just the one semicircle thing, are there going to be opportunities there we may want to add new things? Like, what does it fall into? So whatever the process is, it should be flexible enough to sort of cover the varying different types of things that may need names in the next, decade or so.
And we did have a new street in Ward 3 many years ago, and there was a name that was suggested by the organization that was developing the property and setting up a use for wounded warriors in that in those houses, and we just sort of let them go with it. But there was some discussion leading up to that as to whether we might want to weigh in and name it after someone with some history in the town. And as you say, it'd be good to have a process that works. Okay, so it sounds like council may need to go do some homework and read through the 26 pages and mark it up with a highlighter and come back on this for the moment.
And Mr. Mayor, it would be helpful if themes or in terms of core elements that the council would like to see, and then staff can take that information, flesh out a proposed process. So what we're not asking for you all to design the process, but what's important to you in the process, and we can take those themes and then put it together and bring it back to you.
Okay, that sounds very good. Councilmember Foe, you turned your camera on. Did you want to say something, or you just?
I always support the theme of history. Obviously, I think to the 1856 project's last their first iteration of releasing what they've studied. I think there was a gentleman named Thomas Smallwood who ran the Underground Railroad through these parts. I just grabbed my copy of Freedom Was in Sight, and I continue to find different plumbers that we could continuously honor in this space. Sarah Miranda. I feel like we can do a lot of things historically. Councilmember Smith calls me a dork, but it's my job. So I just like the theme of history appearing in our streets.
I would just note that the love of history is unrelated to my calling a council member a dork.
It's a term of
engaging in personality.
Director Barnes, can you make sure that makes it into the minutes, that that exact comment is quoted in the minutes? I'd like to have that be there. Okay. Any additional discussion of this item tonight, or is it going to be put on the back burner to let the council simmer on for a little while? Okay, very good. Let's move on then. Well, are there any public comments before we move on? Not seeing anybody unmute, so I'll say no. Let's move on to item 7, redesign of town flag.
Director Barnes.
Certainly. Good evening again. This is another follow-up item to our previous discussion at the January work session. We had some very interesting discussion regarding the town flag. So currently the town flag has the former town seal on it. There's a picture at the bottom of the memo, just if anyone wants to recall what it currently looks like. There were some options discussed and some really interesting concepts on best practices from the American Vexillological Association. Those were very easy to find all online. So following the discussion, staff met with Tori Partridge, who was the artist who designed the town seal, and we did some additional research when we were meeting with Tori, and she gave us some great feedback. She very kindly provided us with a mock-up, which is underneath the current flag, just what a new flag could look like with a small variation on the town seal. Now, this does violate one of the principles, which was no town seal on the flag. However, we did look around at neighboring jurisdictions, and nearly all of them had some version of the town seal. I think our only exception was Greenbelt, that had a symbol on it that was a little bit different. But Tori was happy to do a redesign if that's what the council would like, taking elements of the town seal. That would probably cost us around $4,000 or $5,000. just depending on how long it took for the council and the community to make a decision on a completely redesigned flag. But I was really excited to see the mock-ups that she provided, just because I couldn't envision it. And of course, an artist can do that in a snap. So this was just something for the mayor and council to look at, to consider. It's a slightly modified version of the current town seal, but staff are just seeking direction tonight on how the council would like to proceed with a redesign of the town flag.
Okay, thank you, Director Barnes. Council members?
Love it. Let's go with this.
He does have the most time on this, I think. So
I think my colleague from Ward 3 might have me beat, but
Councilmember Inyang, I see you are unmuted. You want to speak on this?
Let me say something here.
Okay, Councilmember Kellon, go ahead. I hadn't called on you, but go ahead.
You see the seal, I'm looking at the seal, right? You
Yes.
see, I'm seeing the green, white, and the blue.
Yes.
Do you know what that means?
No.
That's Sierra Leone flag. Green, white, and blue is Sierra Leone flag. Look at the green. You see the white, the blue. So are we going to change it? I will give another color.
You would have different color than green, white, and blue, or?
Well, because we have green, white, and blue right there. Just watch it. Green at the extreme end, the white and the blue in the middle.
So just 3 stripes, perhaps, or something like that?
Yeah.
Okay.
Green, white, and blue.
Okay. Councilmember Inyang, did you want to make a comment?
Yeah, I was gonna say, I think the mock-up looks great. I think that with the removal of the train lines, makes it easier, like more simple. I'm sort of weighing we're not going to redesign this flag for another 20 years. And so it's almost like, do you make a decision now for expedience sake, or do you go in and actually try to follow the steps provided by the Society of People Who Study Flags?
Good of you to not try to say that word.
Yeah. Director Barnes tried, and I was good for you. She tried. But I think a bigger, I would say I'm okay with something like this, because I think a bigger redesign would probably need to think through do we want to be more intentional in terms of like where we fly the flag and its placement. I think right now I couldn't tell you where the flag is. I think outside of like top of town center, like the town hall, like maybe in another place. So if there's like 2 places in town that have the flag, spending several thousands of dollars to redesign it doesn't seem like the best use of time or expense. And this doesn't look bad, and it's, it does violate the rules, but I think I look at DC as like the gold standard, and I don't even know if they have a town seal. Like, their flag is pretty much like all things DC. They put it everywhere, and so it's almost like you kind of have to choose, and they can choose to invest in their flag as like their thing, and maybe we do the same with our town seal. So yeah. I had hopes for a great flag, but there's a part of me that's just like, I also don't think I personally wouldn't. I don't think I have another. I don't know how long it took us to do the seal. It might have been like 9 months. Like, it was a long time. And I was just like,
It was longer. It was more than that.
I was like, if that's what it takes, I don't think we have evidence. I don't think we have evidence. So hopefully that's enough direction. I went back and forth, but I'm okay. The mock-up looks great. I would have voted for the mock-up.
Okay, any additional council discussion?
Yes, Mr. Mayor,
Councilmember Kellogg, go ahead.
another observation, right? You see the white, you have to broaden a little bit. Then the blue have to be deep a little bit. Yes. Because the blue look like it's fade. So they have to get like sky blue. They have the green, the white is too small. They have to extend the white a little bit. Then the blue have to have a sky blue. Green, white, and blue. It will be perfect with the seal. Yeah.
So you're saying you want the seal, but just to have stripes behind it. Is that correct? Or
No, you see, the seal is going to be like the way the seal is right now and the way the color is. That's why I'm trying to tell you that the white by the green, you see the white line under the green? That white should be broadened a little bit.
Oh.
Then the blue has to have like sky blue, little bit colored. They're going to make the seal bright. Yes. I hope we can do like that. That is going to be easier for us, not to spend a lot of money.
Okay.
Yeah.
Any other comments?
Mr. Mayor,
Councilmember Foe.
I believe we can have our cake and eat it too. I like, honestly, this is a beautiful design. I don't think there's anything wrong with this, and I think that future councils could try to do something potentially different. I had spoken to you after the last meeting, and I just envisioned the rose being prominent. What was your suggestion? I cannot remember it.
I didn't have a suggestion. I read the rules and discussed that we should have something much simpler than what we have.
I thought you suggested potentially to me in dialogue, like the window with the sun in the background.
Yeah. I mean, I have had some ideas, and if I could talk the creator out of an Adobe Illustrator file, then I'd be willing to like throw a few things together myself, as she did. But well, assuming I can stitch together an hour somewhere, which these days is hard to do. But the thought, I think the thought that I had is that we preserve the sunrise piece of it. Okay, so first of all, drop the text, because I think that at distance, no one's gonna be able to read the text. And so drop the text. I would probably drop most of the homage to agriculture that's in the bottom half, just because again, there's detail there that nobody's gonna be able to see. Actually, if I could share my screen, I would like to do a little visual comparison and see if I can send request. Okay, and now let me see if I can share my window. So I hope you guys can see this.
Yep.
That's not what I intended. Oh, there it is. Okay, so it's showing as sharing. So at the same scale, on the very top is the DC flag that that Councilmember Inyang was speaking about. And on the bottom are the mock-ups shrunk down of are the three, the current flag and the two mock-ups. And they're shrunk down like this for a reason. Shrink them down even a little bit more. Is that you can see the DC flag from forever. And that's what flags are about, is being able to say, oh, this is what I'm looking at. And all of our flags are just, there's a circle, and the current flag has the diagonal yellow and blue, and so maybe that's something that's recognizable from a distance. But in general, it's just, you can see a little bit of a circle, and you can see that there's a big outside color. And so to sort of, again, zoom in a little bit here and see if I can make it work. Then if we take this piece of it, so the sun, and we sun piece of it, and simplify that, even that is a little bit too complicated, and expand it out to be more or less the top half, maybe even more than the top half, and then sort of have some indications of green and blue to indicate the river and green stuff on the bottom. And I don't know exactly what I would do with it if I were doing the design. Then we could end up with something that would be visible at distance, at scale, and would be, I presume, simpler to make and perhaps cheaper to make, and might work. But I'm throwing out ideas here, and I haven't actually done it, and so those are just my thoughts at the moment. Is that we should try to go with the flag makers, flag designers guidelines, and I'll admit that the mock-up that was done with the simplified is definitely an improvement over just dropping the main seal on a background. But I think we can do better, and I think we can preserve some of the design elements. We might even be able to sneak the butterfly in if we expanded the top part enough. And I think that would be an interesting thing if we can make it be visible at scale to try to maintain that.
You're trying to get hired. You talk yourself into a job. You go like this.
He's a man looking for a job.
I already have too many jobs as it is, but I'm let me reach out to staff and see if Tori will let me have access to the Illustrator file, and see if I can do some crude mock-ups, and maybe we can toss it back to her and get something done quickly.
I'm fine with that.
Councilmember Callan, you want to say something?
Yes. What is the common animal in Riverdale? The common animal, yes. Whether deer or whatever.
Well, someone I heard once said that we might think about renaming the town to Riverdale Bark, so we could try to put a dog on there.
Don't need dog. But because you have a lot of deer here.
I saw one while I was out on a walk over near DuPont, our DuPont Circle.
Yes, let's put deer. If we're gonna take the seal out, put the deer there, because there's a lot of deer in this area.
There are. I think we should try to have some echo. If I were calling this, then I would say that we should have some echoes between the seal and the flag, and that's what I'm trying to do, is sort of pick out some design elements that can be scaled up and be visible from a distance.
People can admire.
Mm-hmm.
So that is it. Thank you.
Okay, well, we'll see if I can talk Ms. Partridge out of the design, the vector version of it, and see what I can come up with. And if I can't come up with something then the next month or two, then you guys can move forward as you see fit. Any more discussion of this, or we had enough for the evening for that? Okay, let's move on to discussion item 8, holidays designated as non-collection days.
I'll take this item, Mr. Mayor. Good evening again, everyone. This item is back before the mayor and council for final direction on additional holidays that should be designated for non-collection.
Okay.
I think Ivy froze.
The question remains. Did I? Okay. Can you,
We're hearing you now, yes.
Yeah, I'm getting a message that my internet is unstable, so this will be quick. The question remains whether to suspend collections on Martin Luther King Jr.'s birthday, Juneteenth, and Veterans Day. In Prince George's County, the county suspends collections on all major holidays except for the day after Thanksgiving, Veterans Day, and President's Day. And so again, we're looking for the council's sort of final consensus on which additional days should be designated for non-collection. And with that, I'll take any questions. Thank you.
Thank you, Director Lewis. Council members, thoughts? Councilmember Smith.
I would say Martin Luther King Day absolutely needs to be a non-collection day.
Okay.
Agreed.
Yeah, I'm fine with that. I mean, lighting it up with the county, because I think, you know, this is trash for us, but most of the towns gets the recycling with the county, and you know, so some type of alignment makes sense. So I would be in favor of that. And if they don't do MLK, we can do MLK as well. Also the principal.
Okay. Any other
Yes,
thoughts?
Mr. Mayor,
Councilmember Callan, go ahead.
I go to Martin Luther King.
Okay.
Yeah.
It sounds like we're coming to a consensus here at least.
Mr. Mayor, if I can, because I was unable to hear Director Lewis. Director Lewis, can you confirm what of the 4 days that we're asking about that the county also doesn't collect on?
Doesn't collect on?
Correct.
So the county collects on Veterans Day, President's Day, and the day after Thanksgiving. All other major holidays is suspended.
Okay, so the county does not collect on Martin Luther King Day and does not collect on Juneteenth. So that would be the two additions if we follow the county. Thank you.
Councilmember Lingua, so what is your suggestion, Councilmember Lingua?
Follow county.
Okay, so suspend pickup on Martin Luther King Jr. Day and Juneteenth.
Yeah.
Okay. I think we have consensus there. Are there any residents or any public comments on this suggestion? Okay. This seems, do any of the council members who spoke about suspending on MLK Day have concerns about Juneteenth?
None whatsoever.
Mr. Mayor,
Councilmember Callan, go ahead.
on that day, a lot of, because most of these trash collectors, they are black folks. On that day, maybe they themselves want to go and sit down in their house and rest and see what is going on. That one day cannot mess up the town. So that's why I said I'm with Martin Luther King. Let them go and sit down and rest and look at their TV, what is going on. That's all.
So, Councilmember Callan, are you okay with both Juneteenth and MLK Jr. Day being suspended to follow the county? You're muted, so I can't see. Can't hear. Can people hear me?
I'm having trouble hearing anything. I think somebody might have an open mic.
Okay.
Mike is mute.
So can you repeat again, Councilmember Callan? Do you want to have pickup on Juneteenth or not?
I think he advocated that way.
Oh, okay. So why, can I ask staff to bring us a motion next week to suspend on Martin Luther King Jr. Day and Juneteenth?
We will do that, and then that'll give us direction to amend the agreement with Jada.
Okay, very good.
Thank you.
Okay. Whoa, sorry, my screen has gone temporarily crazy, but I should be. Okay, I'm back. Trying to find my mouse cursor. There it is. Okay, so next item on the agenda is Walk Bike Drive Advisory Committee vacancy. As you can read from the memo, these were who were approved previously, and Lucy Aguirre has resigned from the committee. She is going back to school and taking some classes to get another degree, I believe. And she asked to she resigned from the committee, and I reached out to someone else who was previously on my list of people with the urban bicycling expertise that she has. And the name, I actually didn't get the pronunciation of his name, but I'm going to pretend that it's a Spanish Spanish name also. Is Daniel Calles, Calles. And I spoke to him a few times, and he is excited about joining the committee. And so I would like to bring that before the council for approval next week, if there are no objections.
No.
So council, thoughts on that?
It's similar qualifications in terms of the like the I don't know, the rubric they were sort of like considering for
Definitely, perhaps even more so in that I didn't find this out until recently. He works at Vigilante Coffee and bikes to and from town to Vigilante Coffee every day. He lives on the far side of the river from me, and so he does that bike every day he goes to work, and so he's definitely up with urban bicycling. And his wife also applied to be on the committee because she's a walker, full-time walker. I don't know that they actually have a vehicle in the house, a car in the house, and so yeah, I think he definitely meets the qualifications as urban bicycling expert.
I'm fine with that.
Okay. I'm wondering if the buzzing is coming from me.
it's the gentleman in the third ward.
Could be. Okay, so staff can put together a resolution to that effect for next week, then I would appreciate it. Sounds like nobody has any significant objections.
I have no
Next item on the agenda is the 2025 Maryland General Assembly session legislation items that we may want to weigh in on while they're in front of the council. Excuse me, in front of the legislature. Director Barnes, do you want to do this, or do you want me to weigh in?
Either way, Mayor Thompson, I'm happy to, or I know you're much more familiar with this through your PGCMA weekly meetings, I think it is, or daily maybe at this point.
No, it's not daily. It's brutally early on Monday mornings, and I make it to about half of them, honestly. But I did make it to this morning's. So these are a variety of bills that may be of interest to the town. There's always these opening and closing windows for when we might be able to get some input on them, and I don't honestly know the status of all of them. The latest listing from the PGCMA Legislative Committee, which is where we got these from, has, I think, maybe 30 different bills on it, and these are ones that are picked out of that list. And I hope that you can all read the summaries and see how you want to weigh in on them. So I'll just touch on a few of them that are on screen. Senate Bill 832, if you read it, as the summary is written, sounds like a municipal corporation can override land use authority of the county. And so if we decided that we didn't like some zoning decision, then we could just override it. And I honestly think that that might be a little bit more than we want to bite off. I don't remember the status of this particular bill in the legislature right now, but it's something that we could weigh in on if we want to. The Senate Bill 891, House 1466, is weighing in again on something that's typically given to the county about encouraging creation of accessory dwelling units. And again, I don't think there's an update on this at this morning's meeting, but it's something we could weigh in on. 680, I do have an update from this morning. I actually asked about the status. This one is one that I thought we would definitely want to weigh in on if it was at all viable. You can see the last sentence there, prohibiting an individual from becoming registered to vote in a municipal election if the individual is not a citizen of the United States. And so I checked in on the status of it, and it is apparently quite dead. And so I don't think we need to weigh in on it. The legislature seems completely disinclined to move it forward. And so it was introduced by someone, but it's not going anywhere. And then my memory, the rest of them, is that there's several bills that are out there on cooperation between local police departments and federal immigration. And my memory, again, from the meeting this morning, I was driving, and so I was paying attention to not running into other cars more than to the content of the meeting. But my memory is that there are several that are moving forward. This one here, 1188, has some very specific restrictions. There's another one that's interesting. I don't remember the number of it off the top of my head. That is prohibiting disclosure. This might be done through an amendment to the Public Information Act, but prohibiting disclosure of certain records to applicants who might otherwise ask for them. And so it might be that our voter registration lists, for instance, would become not subject to the PIA unless they were requested by someone who had certain standing. And so that would exclude federal immigration authorities from making such a request. I don't know the technical details of that, but it's out there. So I will just open it up to discussion and see if anybody thinks we should weigh in on any of these, and we'll see if we can, if there's still an opportunity to weigh in. Councilmember Smith.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I would wholeheartedly weigh in on in favor of both the ADU bill and the municipal zoning override provision.
Okay.
Yeah,
Oh, I'm sorry.
jumping in there myself. Both the accessible dwelling unit. Yeah, I know this is an issue in terms. I know Montgomery County has had a struggle with this as well in terms of like the opportunity to create accessible accessory dwelling units. So we'd be in favor of this, in terms of the larger housing stock crunch. And so the opportunity to incentivize and allow for dwelling units or in-law suites, I think it's probably a step in the right direction.
Okay, hearing two in favor of the accessory dwelling units. Councilmember Smith, you're back.
Yeah, I would just to add, to humble brag a little bit, in my day job, I actually work with like literally the world's foremost expert on this subject. And I think she would be happy to come speak to the council about that if that's something the council would want. I know that's probably not on the timeline of weighing in on these bills, but just to put it out there.
Well, there's, it's possible. I mean, we might be able to discuss this next week and still get a weigh in on that.
Mr. Mayor?
Councilmember Foe, go ahead.
I agree with my fellow council members. I think ADUs are an incredible way to look at this housing crisis and also offer residents opportunities for additional monies. I love different looks on zoning and how we can utilize plots. And I think this is a great way to encourage investment in our community and maybe some more affordable options for residents as well.
Okay, well, it's and this particular version of it, there have been other versions floating around in the past. This one is just requiring, for instance, the county council in this case to develop some guidelines over the next year and a half, which seems like it's doable. Councilmember Lingua, go ahead.
My question is this. Where are the additional cars going?
That is a question. I mean, the town manager Lestitian has brought that up as an issue in the past, that if you are adding too much space, too many units, then you're going to add that many more cars, and there may not be the infrastructure to support them. And
yeah, I don't think there's the now to support.
And that's why some of the versions of this legislation or other versions of this legislation have had issues, and that they have said they've been not just saying you have to develop something, but saying you have to develop something and it has to have these characteristics, which include allowing every single family housing unit to have a similar size single family housing unit built on the same space. And so if the state mandated that, then we would definitely end up with an issue. This one, I would have to dig into the details to see it, but I believe that it would allow some limits that the county could put into their legislation, and it might work. But it's a balancing act. There's no question that it's not all honey and roses. It's there's some downsides to it as well. Mr. Town Manager, did you want to add anything to the discussion for that?
I'm trying to read through the bill now because I did not track it carefully enough. I didn't know there was a new version of it. But I think that the language is going to matter, because in the early version that the mayor and I first discussed, it would allow, for example, for basically every single family home to become a two-family home. So theoretically, the townhomes, for example, in Riverdale Park Station, the lower level garages could theoretically then be all converted to efficiency units.
Mm-hmm.
And then where are people going to park, and how do we provide provision of services? And then I had questions about that earlier version. I may still over the new one, over the impact of lot coverage ratio. If this has to be permitted, then does that run afoul at all with lot coverage ratio, or just in a community where stormwater management is such a large concern? In terms of if there's a conflict, which provision trumps the other? And so I'll read through this tonight and see if I still have any of those same questions.
Okay, and the bill is very definitely, as I remember this one, I think it was discussed as still being viable. It got about 20 seconds this morning, and so So I don't know that I have a serious update. But Councilmember Lingua, would you mind muting to see if that eliminates the buzz? I know the rest of us are having trouble.
Yeah, sure.
Thanks. Okay, that does appear to be the source, maybe. And so definitely, you know, if we want to say we can send a letter that says we are supportive of the general idea, but we have the following sets of concerns about overwhelming local infrastructure, and there should be flexibilities in the bill introduced to the bill by amendment to recognize those issues. Councilmember Smith.
Oh yeah, just to know, Mr. Mayor, I would not support adding those contingencies to such a letter of support. I think it would be fantastic if we allowed every single family home in town to become a multifamily home. That sounds wonderful.
Okay. There's some possible variance of opinion on the council, which happens. So if we're going to issue a letter, we have to hammer out a compromise.
Mr. Mayor, I support the idea.
Okay, you support the idea, and you're interested to hear possibilities on the actual bill and what the town might or might not support. Okay. Anyone want to weigh in on the various immigration bills that I discussed?
Boo.
Does that mean you support the at least the intent of the bills?
No, Mr. Mayor, it means I support, as I believe we all do, all of the residents in our wonderful community here, no matter where they come from. And I think they are all entitled to have a say in our democracy because they share this community with us. And it is not the job of our police to enforce federal immigration laws, and we should not overburden them with such requirements that would also lead to a decline in public safety, particularly in our immigrant communities.
Okay, so, and I presume you think that withholding requested documents from federal authorities is also a good idea?
The warrant.
Okay. Okay, why don't I work with the town manager to see what we might present to the council next Monday, and in the meantime, I will pass the sentiments and concerns, and including the lack of consensus on certain issues to the PGCMA. There's one other bill that I think that everyone everyone here might support, and that is a bill that raises the maximum fine that can be charged by a municipal corporation from $1,000 to $5,000. So the $1,000 limit has been there for decades, I believe. And so having a little inflationary adjustment of that, I think is a good idea. As you might imagine, both MML and PGCMA are strong advocates for this. I don't know that we need to write a letter, but I did want everyone to know that it's making its way through the legislature. And if you run into our delegates or senator while you're out and about, then please let them know that you support that. Okay, I think we're done here. Are there any public comments on any of these proposed bills? Any thoughts that people have? Presidents want.
Mr. Mayor, I want you to clear this article for me. Like you say, before they fine somebody 1,000, now they want to increase it to 5,000. Which offense is that?
We would choose what the fines are. So, for instance, in our town right now, I believe there's a fine for putting up a 6-foot fence if you haven't gotten the proper permits. That's limited at maybe a couple of $100s. And then I think that I at least hope that the fine for burning trash in the middle of the street is perhaps much higher than that, perhaps several hundred or $1,000. And we are limited by state law at the top end to $1,000. And so
Okay,
this would just this would raise that top limit, and then we would choose as a council what limits for each offense we thought were okay.
Okay, that is good. Thank you.
Right. It would just give us extra flexibility, and certainly when the $1,000 limit was enacted, then probably that was a sizable fraction of an automobile purchase, and that's not true anymore.
Okay, thank you.
Councilmember Lingua, do you have a comment on something? Anything?
No.
Okay. No public comments. I'm not seeing any, and I think we're exhausted council comments. So next item on discussion items are the minutes. If anyone has any comments right now, well, if anyone has any comments, then please pass them on to Director Barnes. We could also go through them if anybody wants to add comments at this time, but the usual process is to reach out directly to Director Barnes, and we get marked up minutes, final minutes at the legislative session. So unless there's discussion of that, let's move on to unfinished business. The first item under unfinished is Charter Amendment Resolution 2025 CR-01 regarding amendments to Article 2, Town Council, and Article 7, Administration and Personnel. This is about we've been discussing this for months, the Deputy Town Manager position. So staff?
Yes, Mr. Mayor, this is just an opportunity if the council has any questions or concerns, or if there's any comments from the public. As indicated in the memo, we have a timeline. If you can tab down there a little bit on the memo, keep going right in there. So we're looking at the public hearing being next week. And then anticipated adoption being at the end of March. And then we would have effective dates being in May for both the code and the charter changes.
Okay. Have any council members or members of the public come up with comments on the legislation since introduction earlier this month? Any other discussion of the amendment overall? Okay, everybody had a chance. So let's move on to ordinance 2025-OR-01.
And
same topic.
It'd be the same topic and the same thing, Mr. Mayor. Just looking for any additional comments or concerns from the council or the community.
So anyone who wants to raise your hand, unmute your microphone and speak up. Councilmember Lingua, your microphone's open. Do you have a comment or?
I'm fine with it.
Okay. Very good. Okay, let's move on to unfinished business item number 3, ordinance 2025-OR-02. Regarding elected officials' compensation modifications. This was introduced.
Mr. Robinson, if you can go to the next item, please. Thank you.
So, what was the introduction date? It was introduced at the February meeting, is that correct? And so we're here to discuss it in the middle. Any council discussion of this this ordinance? Okay. Are there any public comments to discuss ordinance 2025-OR-02 regarding elected officials' compensation modifications? Okay, I guess we will see it on the agenda next week for adoption. Is that correct, Mr. Town Manager?
Yes, Mr. Mayor, it'll be up for your consideration next week.
Very good. Okay, that brings us to new business. Well, are there any other items of unfinished business that the council wants to bring up before we move on to new business? looking awfully quiet, so let's move on to new business. First item is closure of Sunny Days Child Care Center. Is there a memo regarding this?
There's not, Mr. Mayor. I believe that some folks had reached out to yourself, perhaps other members of the council. I did see an email from a neighboring jurisdiction where someone had reached out to College Park about the closure. I don't have an update on what the federal government plans on doing with 4700 River Road. And if I did, that may change by the end of the sentence. Right? I don't think I'm wrong on that.
I think you're absolutely online. So I'll just I think I brought this up at a previous meeting, but the Sunny Days Child Care Center is in the building that used to be the USDA building that the General Services Administration of the federal government, at least several months ago, was looking at disposing of, and they were looking to put it on the market and sell it as a market rate item. And interestingly, that might have a significant positive impact on our tax base, because it's not a cheap building. It's a pretty big building, and even at the discounted rates that people seem to think office buildings get these days, it was certainly quite painful when the GSA bought it. Very bad for our finances back then. So if it came back on, it would probably be very good. But inside of that building is an integrated childcare center, and it serves a lot of people, including residents of town. I have the names of 3 or 4 people in town who I think would be happy to come discuss it if we'd like them to. And we can send a letter to the GSA, to our congressional representatives, and ask that the daycare center be included as a term in the sale, and ensure continued operation during any sale and renovation of the building. And so that's why I'm bringing it up for the council, is to see whether the council is interested in writing such a letter and sending it. Councilmember Smith.
I mean, I received a similar email, Mr. Mayor. I am in general supportive as a principal of looking out for this spot and making sure it's included as a condition of sale and all those things. I worry if our weighing in on the issue might have the opposite of the intended effect, given the current custodians of the building, shall we say. Once, as I understand the way these people operate, one of the first things they would do, if they even read it, would be to examine our laws and our code, and kind of the same kind of stuff we were talking about on one of the previous agenda items with our immigrant voting policies and whatnot. And thus might not be as inclined to help. So, yeah, I'm not sure what the answer is one way or the other, but I'm supportive of this, but I am legitimately not making a joke, worried that our endorsing the idea would have the opposite effect with the custodians of the facility.
Well, that's possible if we wrote to GSA or the White House, but it might be that writing to our congressional representatives that they might be able to finesse it in some way. So it's a possibility. Mr. Town Manager, do you need to comment immediately, or can you wait for Councilmember Enyang?
I'll pause for the council, sorry.
Councilmember Enyang, go ahead.
Yes, I've received countless emails stopping at grocery stores and playgrounds, phone calls. I think multiple people in my neighborhood have sent children there, and I haven't even heard a plan for what they would do when it's closed. Other neighboring facilities are already at capacity, and so it's not like it can just absorb into another facility, and so it would literally be displacement. And obviously, there's never a good time to displace or impact daycare services. It's probably the only way for a lot of working parents to be able to go to work. And so, combined with the harsh reality for federal workers, a lot of, I think you have to be a federal worker, at least someone in the household, in order to be eligible to go there. It would just be another affront to a lot of the members of our community. And so I've written a couple emails to GSA. I think there was an organized campaign from a lot of the parents on how to send emails. And so I'm fully agree on setting something to our congressional delegation to see what's available, whether it's tying it to the terms of a lease or finding like a nearby replacement facility or something like that. I'm not sure what's possible, but something to not inconvenience families, I think would be a goal that we should definitely strive for.
Okay, Mr. Town Manager.
The only thing I would add, Mr. Mayor, is from the staff perspective, I am tasked with working with GSA on a different project. And I think the idea of sending something to the congressional delegation would not impact my other work. But I'd be concerned otherwise.
Okay. That's a very important point, and the other item is a strategic, very strong strategic interest for the town. So we don't want to disrupt that. Any other council comments? So I'm hearing a rough consensus that appealing to our congressional delegation, so our senators and Representative Ivy, is a good direction to go at this time.
I'm okay. Yeah.
Yes.
Okay. So if staff could write some letters, then I'll be happy to sign them. We can get those out. Should we bring this up at the council meeting next week to make it official, or I think we probably should. What's your thought?
My thought is that is the council's practice.
Yeah. So we'll put this on the agenda for next week, but now we have a direction for what to put on the agenda. So we'll follow that. Okay. Next item was added at the last minute, maybe the last few hours before the meeting. Does staff have the document that they can share on screen?
Mayor Thompson, we don't have necessarily a document, just a thread of emails that we can share with the council in general. The request came in from Park and Planning regarding verification of a street name. This may have been the first request, at least in my tenure of this time. This impacts, I believe it's 4 properties on what we call or refer to as Beale Circle. Park and Planning has asked to change the premises address to East Beale Circle in their records. According to SSTAT, which is what staff typically use when we're looking at properties in town and verifying, obviously, that they are in town or the owner information. The property is identified as Beale Circle. In 2 cases, I think it's 6303 and 6309, the the mailing address is listed as East Beale Circle. So there's no consistency that we can find. I did a quick search of PG Atlas, and the road is also listed as Beale Circle on PG Atlas. So they're asking for the town to take a position on changing, again, in Park and Planning's records, the premises address to East Beale Circle. Apparently there's also a street sign that says East Beale Circle. So it's a little bit muddled. And every kind of database we go to, we think, oh, okay, all this information would be consistent, but it's not necessarily consistent as you go through SSTAT. And PG Atlas and things of that nature. So they're asking us to make a determination on or an approval rather of the street name being East Beale Circle.
So Park and Planning's preference is to name it is to have it be named East Beale Circle, and they would like us to give them a thumbs up on that.
Yes.
And-
Go ahead.
And Mr. Mayor, I think the practical reasons of changing a street name is why Park and Planning is asking the town, because whatever it is, if it's Beale and then you're going to tell the folks it's not East that have East, and the ones who don't have East, you're going to have to add East, because it has implications for changing addresses, driver's license, things of that nature. So no matter which way you go, you're going to have one or two or three residents that are going to be displeased.
Yes. Councilmember Smith, this is in your ward. What's your thought?
Just if I understood the town manager's comments correctly, that even though there are two houses that are currently in authoritative database that I'm sure is as such, as East, like we can't just do the status quo. That's not an option. Like we have to change it one way or the other.
That's what, and I would agree with Park and Planning that there should be one designated name for the street. And we have two names for the street. One is Beale Circle, the other is East Beale Circle. We can't compel someone to go change their addresses in that, so perhaps they won't. But if they have difficulty with mail service or anything like that, their official address will be different.
I can tell you, living on Sheridan Street, that it doesn't matter. I have difficulty with my mail service, even though there's only one street
going around.
I had a package for the same number on Ravenswood delivered to my house. So you can't win that way. But in terms of changing addresses on a driver's license, that sort of thing, then I can see that people would be pretty upset about that if they had to, or changing insurance records, or it's all so.
But I have a question, Mr. Mayor. If we changed it to East Beale Circle, presumably we would also have to change the other side of Beale Circle's name to West Beale Circle. Now, I don't think there's a property with a mailing address, like nobody's getting mail at West Beale Circle, but is that correct that we would have to change the other street name as well for 911 dispatching and things like that?
It would make sense, and I presume that MNCPPC is working with the 911 system to ensure addresses are properly recorded.
Yeah, in that case, my first preference is for the status quo. My second would be just to name it all Beale Circle, to avoid having to have two new street names in that area. So there's the view from Ward 1.
So what is MNCPPC? I mean, it's there are no, the only houses on Beale Circle are the ones that are on what would be called East Beale Circle. And so what is MNCPPC going to say if we say, no, its name is Beale Circle?
Director Barnes?
I'm not certain, to be honest with you. I'd have to, this process was all new to me. We did get lots of good information about how streets are named and what the roles of each level of government are. But I did not ask if we just said, no, we want to leave it, or if we decide to go in a different direction. I'd have to ask to get more information on that.
And the chief just checked the CAD system for 911 calls, and the CAD system has the street named East Beale Circle.
So interesting.
So who doesn't have east?
Director Barnes.
So all of the properties, the premise address in SDAT is all Beal Circle. And then the two that have mailing addresses that say East Beal Circle, I think it was 6303 and 6309. And so, of course, this came up because of the fence permit that we already talked about earlier in the evening. So this issue was uncovered. But there's not really any clear cut. I did mention that we could look into the individual deeds for the properties to just see what the addresses were back then, but there's not a consistent answer on the name of the street.
So since this had just come up at 4:30 this afternoon, Mr. Mayor, do you want us to just investigate this further and come back next week?
I think that would be a good idea. I think it's good to get it out in front of us, and you know, if we can peel back the designation. I believe that I got a message somewhere. I don't know if it was in chat here or where, but that from Councilmember Smith saying that he's hoping for West Beal Circle to be redeveloped, but all the properties that would be redeveloped have Baltimore Avenue addresses, and so that's there's never going to be.
You know, there's
anything
retail on the other side, Mr. Mayor.
that has a Baltimore Avenue address.
Yeah,
I think it's okay.
So they unless you're going to suggest subdivision, then you're not going to have.
I'm talking if that entire corner was redeveloped, you might have retail on the Baltimore Avenue side of that property, but then also the east side of that property, which would be along West Beal Circle.
But I mean, they're single parcels right now, so it requires subdivision if you're going to have two different. I mean, I can imagine.
It's a speculative point. I'm not going to hold you to it. I think we can move on. Yeah.
And since there's nothing that's going to go in the middle, definitely not. Then they can all be Beal Circle, and there just happens to be a very large median, funny shaped median, and so because the ones on the west side would have different numbering. Councilmember Inyang is looking tired. I think he's go ahead.
It's not even a circle. I mean, if we're gonna rename and stuff, should we like but don't get me started on the courts that are no longer courts. I'm sure East-West Highway construction probably ruined the shape of the Beal Circle at some point. I think it's interesting that like the street at first I thought the numbers were the houses next to each other, but they're like two houses in between. And so yeah, I think it would be worthwhile to see what the this might be one of the path of least resistance wins, and if it's like we just what are the implications of just leaving it as Beal Circle, and like how many people get impacted versus changing two street names seems like the most, and I'm sure there's some way in between, but if it's yeah, I think a path of least resistance probably makes the most sense, and then the systems accordingly may just fall back into place. But this is an issue that we're just like this is an issue on paper, right?
Mm-hmm.
It's not like something happened. It's just like we noticed this, and so it's an issue on paper. I think going over the top to rename everything to solve an issue that wasn't an issue, unless had a person not want to build a fence, we probably won't be talking about this. Seems like we should take the path that's two people have to, or two systems have to update something in the background, as opposed to everyone having to like go in and redo all their stuff. Seems a bit excessive.
Yeah, I'm gonna share an image just to answer some of the questions that people have come up. If again I'm allowed to share, and I can make this actually work. I hope that's it.
I don't know. To me, this all sounds very Bart Simpson. Damned if we do, damned if we don't.
Okay, so you can see the image there that there is in fact a circle in the middle. It just doesn't happen to have any pavement on it. And where the 32 is at the top of the image, then there are in principle some lots there, but all of that was bought with Project Green Space money by the town years ago, and so nothing is ever going to develop there. So so you can both see why it's called Beale Circle, and the fact that nothing's ever going to be built on the what would be the even numbered side of East Beale Circle and the odd numbered side of West Beale Circle if we did the renaming. So it's just one of those, as Councilmember Enyang said, it's a really a non-issue, except that somebody at MNC PPC got excited at some point and added the designations. Okay, sounds like we're going to get more research from town staff and have perhaps a more definitive path forward, and staff will ask MNC PPC, what if we say no, it's all Beale Circle, and we are mildly insulted that you've been giving it the wrong name for so many years, and you need to buy us some lobster to make up for it. Okay. That's the end of items under new business. Does anybody have any items of new business to bring up? Ms. Katz. Generally, we preserve this for the council, but there's not a public. But go ahead. It's a work session.
Thank you. I appreciate this. And I don't really know if it's new business. It's something I probably should have said at the top of the meeting, which I wasn't here for. And that is, as I was walking through Town Center where the MARC station is located yesterday, I noticed the clock was not showing the correct time. So I just wanted to, since you all are gathered here today, I wanted to let you know.
And the town staff are aware of that, and we're already in touch with the contractor.
Okay, great. Thanks.
The clock is pretty old, so I'd say that really belongs under old business.
No. It's money into that clock. Maybe I am older. I've been here longer than I think I have, but I recall us furbishing that clock. So.
And I, in my short 8 years here, I recall us having to have we put a couple $1,000s in there to have it repaired before.
Right, but all of you don't remember a time when there wasn't a clock, do you?
It's true. We don't.
30 years
Sundial?
old.
That's what you're talking about. You were here with the sundial, of course.
What did you say, Councilmember Lee? Excuse me?
It's 30 years old.
Yeah. It was, I don't remember if it was here when I first moved in or if it was put up shortly after, but I knew it was new back then. So, anyway.
For the 75th anniversary, wasn't it?
I think that's correct, but I don't know whether they got it in for the actual anniversary or whether it might have been installed a little bit later, just planned to commemorate the anniversary. I suspect there's a plaque on it that tells us this, if we wanted to walk over there and look at it. Okay, any other items of new business? Okay, we're going to make it out of here before 11 o'clock. We are adjourned. Thank you, everyone. Lots of great discussions.
Mr. Mayor, I'm still listening for the Ramadan.
Well, we can't vote until next Monday.
I won't be here because at that time.
Understood. I understand. So I will not see you next week. I'll see you at the end of March or beginning of April.
Okay, thank you very much.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Ramadan Mubarak.
Eid Mubarak to you too.